You up for it? One quick game, little lady." The words came from a tall, silver-haired man with sharp eyes, and the kind of voice that people usually didn't ignore. The winter wind cut through Bryant Park like a blade, sending newspapers tumbling across the frozen ground. Most New Yorkers hurried past with their heads down, collars pulled high against the December chill. But in the southwest corner of the park, near the old carousel that stood silent in the off-season, a lone figure sat motionless at a weathered stone chess table. Zara Williams, 14 years old, with intelligent dark eyes and hands that moved like a pianist's across the board, was setting up pieces for what might be her last game of the day. The cold had driven away most potential opponents hours ago, but she remained partly out of stubbornness and partly out of necessity. Each game meant $5 if she won, nothing if she lost. Today she'd won 3 and lost none, but $15 wouldn't cover what Mama Dorothy needed. A shadow fell across her board. She looked up to see a man in an expensive charcoal overcoat, steam rising from a coffee cup in his leather-gloved hands. He was tall, maybe 45, with silver threading through his dark hair, and the kind of confident posture that came from never having to worry about money. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice carrying the crisp authority of corporate boardrooms. Zara's eyes flicked over him. Designer shoes. Rolex watch, the subtle confidence of wealth. She'd learned to read people quickly in the park. $5, she said simply. "You win, you get it back. I win, I keep it." The man smiled and pulled out his wallet, placing a crisp $5 bill on the table. "I'm William Harrison," he said, extending his hand. "Zara," she replied, not offering her last name. She'd learned that much caution at least. William settled into the iron chair across from her, immediately noticing how she'd claimed the side, facing away from the wind. "Smart. I haven't lost a game in months," he said conversationally, as she finished setting up her pieces. "Everyone loses. Eventually," Zara replied, her fingers dancing over the black pieces with unconscious familiarity. "Question is whether you learn from it." Something in her tone made William look at her more carefully. This wasn't just another hustler trying to make quick money off tourists. There was something different in her eyes, a depth, a calculation that spoke of real understanding. "White or black?" she asked. "You choose. I'll take black." She turned the board, her movements economical and precise. "Your move, Mr. Harrison." As William reached for his king's pawn, he had no idea he was about to encounter the most talented chess player he'd ever faced, and that this 14-year-old girl from the Bronx would change not just his understanding of the game, but his understanding of himself. 3 moves in, and William Harrison realized he might have made a mistake. Zara's response to his king's pawn opening wasn't textbook, but it was devastatingly effective. She'd immediately challenged his center with a move he'd never seen before, creating complications that seemed to spiral out from the board like ripples in a pond. "Interesting choice," he murmured, studying the position. "My grandfather taught me that," Zara said, her voice soft but sure. "He said the books only show you what other people already figured out. Sometimes you gotta find your own way." William glanced up from the board. "Your grandfather played." The correction was gentle, but final. "Marcus Williams. He died when I was 10, but he taught me everything important." As William contemplated his next move, Zara let her mind drift back to those afternoons in Mama Dorothy's cramped apartment in the South Bronx. The chess set had been her grandfather's pride, a wooden set he'd bought secondhand in 1987, when he'd gotten his first real job after coming back from Vietnam. The pieces were mismatched, the white king wobbled on a loose base, and one of the black knights had a chip in its mane. But to 10-year-old Zara, it might as well have been made of gold. "Chess is like life," little Queen Grandpa Marcus used to say, his weathered hands guiding hers across the board. Every piece has its purpose, but the queen, she's got the most power and the most responsibility. She protects what matters. Those lessons had taken on new meaning 2 years ago, when her mother Keisha lost her battle with breast cancer. At 28, Keisha Williams had been a single mother, working 2 jobs to keep them afloat, cleaning offices at night and stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day. The medical bills had eaten through their savings like acid, and when the end came, there hadn't even been enough for a proper funeral. That's when Mama Dorothy, Keisha's mother, had stepped in. At 68, Dorothy Williams was a force of nature compressed into 5 feet 2 inches of determination. She'd raised 3 children as a single mother in the same Bronx apartment where she now lived with Zara, working as a home health aide until arthritis forced her into an early retirement she couldn't afford. Your mama wanted you to have chances. She never got mama. Dorothy had told Zara the night after the funeral, sitting beside her granddaughter's narrow bed in the room they now shared. She saw how smart you are, how you think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. That mind of yours is a gift, baby girl. Don't you waste it. But gifts didn't pay rent, and being smart didn't put food on the table. When Mama Dorothy's arthritis flared up bad enough that she couldn't work her weekend cleaning job, Zara had made a decision. She'd heard about kids making money playing chess in the parks, and she figured her grandfather's lessons might finally pay off. That first day in Bryant Park had been terrifying. She'd sat at an empty table for 2 hours before anyone approached a college kid who'd underestimated her completely. The $5 she'd won that day felt like a fortune. By the end of the month, she was bringing home $60 a week, enough to cover groceries and help with utilities. Your move, Williams said, pulling Zara back to the present. She looked down at the board, immediately seeing the trap he'd tried to set with his bishop. Instead of avoiding it, she moved directly into it, sacrificing her knight for positional advantage. Williams' eyebrows rose. That's either brilliant or completely reckless, he said. Give it 3 moves, Zara replied calmly. 3 moves later, Williams' king was in check, his rook was trapped, and he was looking at a position that had gone from promising to hopeless in the span of 90 seconds. How old did you say you were? He asked, studying the board with new respect. I didn't say. But I'm 14, and you learned this from your grandfather mostly. Also from watching games online when the library's open, and from playing anyone who'll sit down with me. She moved her queen, putting additional pressure on his position. Check. William moved his king, the only legal option available. You ever play in tournaments? Can't afford the entry fees. Her response was matter of fact, without bitterness. Plus, most tournaments are on weekends, and weekends are my best earning days here. How much do you usually make? Good day? Maybe $30. Bad day, nothing. She moved again, and William saw the checkmate coming 3 moves out. Depends on who shows up, and whether they want to play a black girl who doesn't look like she belongs in their world. The casual way she said it hit William harder than he'd expected. He'd spent his entire adult life in boardrooms where the only people of color were serving coffee or cleaning up afterward. He'd never really thought about what that meant until this moment, sitting across from someone whose talent was undeniable, but whose opportunities were non-existent. Checkmate, Zara said quietly. William stared at the board for a long moment, seeing not just his defeated king, but the elegant beauty of the combination that had destroyed his position. In 25 years of playing chess, he'd never been outmaneuvered so completely or with such apparent ease. That was extraordinary, he said, reaching for his wallet. Absolutely extraordinary. It was just chess, Zara replied, though he caught the hint of pride in her voice as she reset the pieces. Want to play another? 20 minutes later. William Harrison was staring at his second consecutive defeat, this one even more decisive than the first. The $5 bills on the table had grown to 20, and his respect for the teenager across from him had grown exponentially. "I need to ask," he said, leaning back in his chair despite the cold. "Have you ever had formal training? Coaching?" Zara shook her head carefully, folding the bills and tucking them into her jacket pocket. "Just what Grandpa Marcus taught me, and whatever I can pick up online. There's this channel where they analyze Grandmaster games. I watch it sometimes when I can get to the library." That's it. That's it. She began setting up the pieces again, her movements automatic and precise. Why William didn't answer immediately. Instead, he found himself studying her face, seeing past the wariness to the sharp intelligence beneath. At 14, she was already playing at a level that most club players never reached. With proper training, proper opportunities. "I run a tech company," he said finally. "Harrison Tech Solutions. We develop software for logistics and supply chain management. Nothing glamorous, but it's been successful." "Good for you," Zara said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sure why he was telling her this. "The reason I mention it is that I understand talent when I see it. In my business, you learn to recognize people who have that spark, the ability to see patterns, to think several steps ahead, to find solutions that others miss." He gestured to the chessboard. "What you just did to me twice in a row. That's not luck, and it's not just natural ability. That's the kind of strategic thinking that can't be taught." Zara's hands stilled on the pieces. "What's your point?" "My point is that you're playing chess for $5 a game in a public park when you should be competing for state championships and college scholarships." The silence stretched between them. Zara finished setting up the board before responding. "You know what I should be doing," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I should be making sure my grandmother has enough money for her arthritis medication. I should be making sure we don't get evicted from the only home I've got left. I should be figuring out how a 14-year-old black girl from the Bronx is supposed to survive in a world that would rather pretend she doesn't exist." The words hit William like a physical blow, partly because of their raw honesty, and partly because they forced him to confront his own assumptions. He'd spent so much of his adult life insulated by wealth and privilege that he'd forgotten how precarious life could be for people without those advantages. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You're right. I was being presumptuous." "It's okay," Zara replied, though her posture remained defensive. "Rich people always think problems can be solved with money. Can't they?" The question hung in the air between them. Zara studied his face, looking for signs of condescension or pity. Instead, she saw something she hadn't expected: genuine curiosity, and maybe even a hint of vulnerability. "Some problems," she said carefully, "but money doesn't teach you how to survive when people look at you and see everything you're not, instead of everything you are. Money doesn't make you belong somewhere you've never been welcome." William nodded slowly. In the past hour, this teenager had taught him more about chess than he'd learned in years of study. Now she was teaching him something even more valuable about perspective. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. Zara gestured for him to continue. 10 years ago, I was married to a wonderful woman named Sarah. We had a son, Jason. He's 16 now. William's voice grew quieter. I was so focused on building the company, on achieving the kind of success I thought would make me happy, that I missed everything important. Soccer games. School plays bedtime stories. I kept telling myself I was doing it for them, but really I was doing it for me. He paused, watching a group of tourists hurry past with cameras and shopping bags. Sarah asked for a divorce when Jason was 12. She said she felt like a single mother anyway, so she might as well make it official. The custody hearing was brutal. Jason told the judge he didn't want to live with someone who was never around anyway. I'm sorry, Zara said, and meant it. The thing is, I won. I built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I have a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a house in the Hamptons, cars worth more than most people make in a year, and I'm completely alone." He met her eyes. "I play chess because it's the only thing that makes me feel connected to anything real anymore. Why are you telling me this?" "Because in the past hour, you've reminded me what it feels like to be surprised, to be challenged, to face someone who earned their skill instead of buying it." William leaned forward. "I'm not saying I can solve your problems with money, but maybe we can help each other. I need someone to remind me that there's more to life than acquisition and achievement. And you need opportunities that match your talent." Zara was quiet for a long moment, processing what he'd said. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I don't know yet," William admitted, "but I'd like to find out. Are you willing to keep talking?" For the first time since they'd started playing, Zara smiled a real smile, not the careful mask she wore for strangers. "One more game," she said, "but this time, let's make it $10. The third game lasted 47 minutes longer than their first two combined. William had adjusted his strategy, playing more defensively and trying to avoid the tactical complications where Zara seemed most comfortable. For a while it worked. The position remained roughly equal through the opening and middle game, with both players maneuvering carefully for small advantages. But as they entered the endgame, Zara's superiority became apparent. Her technique was flawless, her calculation precise. She converted a slight advantage into a winning position with the kind of patient, methodical play that William associated with masters who had decades of experience. "Where did you learn endgame technique like that?" he asked as she demonstrated the winning method. "YouTube," Zara said simply. "There's this Russian guy who does endgame lessons. I've probably watched each video 10 times. William shook his head in amazement. "Most players your age can barely handle basic tactics, and you're playing endgames like a master." Grandpa Marcus always said the endgame is where chess gets honest. All the fancy tricks are gone, and what's left is pure understanding. As Zara collected her winnings, $30 now, more than she usually made in a full day, William found himself reluctant to end their encounter. "Are you here tomorrow?" he asked. "Depends on the weather. If it's too cold, people don't come to the park. What if I told you I had a heated room with a dozen chess sets and all the training materials you could want?" Zara's expression became guarded again. "What would you want in return?" "Just to learn from you," William said honestly, "and maybe to see what you could accomplish with proper support. I don't take charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering partnership." William pulled out his business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my address. If you change your mind, show up tomorrow at noon. If you don't, I'll understand." Zara took the card, glancing at the Upper East Side address. "Why should I trust you?" "Because you have nothing to lose by meeting me in a public place during daylight hours, and because I think we might be able to accomplish something together that neither of us could do alone." She studied his face for a moment longer, then nodded. "I'll think about it. That's all I can ask." As William walked away, disappearing into the stream of pedestrians heading toward Fifth Avenue, Zara remained at the table. She looked down at the business card in her hand. Harrison Tech Solutions, William Harrison, the third chief executive officer. On the back, he'd written an address and noon tomorrow, if you're interested in changing the game. She folded the card carefully and put it in her pocket next to the $30. For the first time in months, she had enough money for groceries and Mama Dorothy's medication. But more than that, for the first time since her mother's death, she had something that felt almost like hope. The walk back to the Bronx took an hour and 20 minutes on the subway, but Zara didn't mind. She spent the journey replaying the games in her head, analyzing the moments where she'd found winning combinations and the places where William had surprised her with his tactical awareness. He wasn't a weak player, probably rated somewhere around 1800 or 1900, she guessed. strong enough to appreciate what she was doing, weak enough that she could demonstrate it clearly. More importantly, he'd listen to her. Not just about chess, but about everything else. Most adults either dismissed her concerns as childish or tried to offer simplistic solutions. William had done neither. He'd acknowledged the complexity of her situation without trying to minimize it. Still, she was cautious. Mama Dorothy had raised her to be skeptical of offers that seemed too good to be true, especially from people who lived in a completely different world. Rich white men didn't usually take an interest in poor black girls from the Bronx unless they wanted something in return. But what could he possibly want from her that he couldn't get more easily somewhere else? The apartment building where she lived with Mama Dorothy was a 6-story walk-up built in the 1940s, its red brick facade stained with decades of city grime. The elevator had been broken for 2 years, so Zara climbed the 4 flights to their apartment, her footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. "Zara." "That you, baby?" Mama Dorothy's voice called from the kitchen as she opened the door. "Yes, ma'am." Zara hung her jacket on the hook by the door and walked into the small kitchen where her grandmother was sitting at the table with a cup of tea and a crossword puzzle. Dorothy Williams was a small woman with steel gray hair and hands that showed the wear of 68 years of hard work. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent, and she missed very little of what went on around her. "How'd you do today?" she asked, looking up from her puzzle. Zara pulled the folded bills from her pocket. $30. 30. That's more than usual. I played one guy 3 times. Rich businessman who thought he was better than he was. Mama Dorothy's expression grew concerned. "Rich men don't usually play chess in the park with teenage girls unless they want something, baby. You be careful." "I know." Zara sat down across from her grandmother. "He offered to help me with my chess. Said he has training materials and proper equipment. What's he want in return?" "He says nothing. Says he just wants to see what I could do with proper support." Mama Dorothy set down her pencil and studied her granddaughter's face. "What do you think?" "I think he's lonely," Zara said after a moment. "I think he's got all the money in the world and no one to share it with. And maybe he sees helping me as a way to feel like his life means something." "And you? What do you see when you look at this opportunity?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. "I see a chance," she said finally. "Maybe the only chance I'll ever get to find out how good I really am." Mama Dorothy reached across the table and took her granddaughter's hand. "Your mother always said you were going to do something special with your life. She saw it in you, even when you were little, that way you have of seeing patterns, of understanding how things fit together. But there's a difference between opportunity and exploitation. Rich folks got rich by knowing how to get more value than they give. You make sure whatever deal you make with this man, you're getting your fair share." "How do I know what's fair?" "You trust your instincts," Mama Dorothy said firmly. "You got your grandfather's mind and your mother's heart. That combination don't lead you wrong if you listen to it." That night, Zara lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about choices and chances. Through the thin walls, she could hear the Gonzalez family next door, watching television, and from the apartment below came the sound of Mrs. Chen practicing violin, the same scales she'd been working on for months. These were the sounds of her world people struggling and hoping and making do with what they had. If she took William Harrison's offer, would she be leaving this world behind? And if she did, what would that make her? But then she thought about her mother working 2 jobs and still dreaming of something better for her daughter. She thought about Grandpa Marcus, who'd seen potential in a 6-year-old's questions about why the horse moved in an L shape. She thought about Mama Dorothy, who'd sacrificed her retirement savings to keep them afloat after Keisha's death. Maybe she owed it to them to find out how far her talent could take her. Maybe walking away from opportunity was just another form of giving up. At 11:30 the next morning, Zara stood in front of a gleaming apartment building on East 79th Street, looking up at the marble facade and wondering if she'd made a mistake. The doorman, a middle-aged Latino man in a crisp uniform, approached her with a polite but wary expression. "Can I help you, miss? I'm here to see William Harrison," she said, pulling out the business card. "He's expecting me." The doorman studied the card, then looked at Zara again. His expression softened slightly. "Mr. Harrison mentioned you might be coming. He's in the penthouse. I'll call up and let him know you're here." 5 minutes later, Zara was standing in an elevator that moved so smoothly she barely felt it climbing 32 floors. When the doors opened, William Harrison was waiting for her, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Mama Dorothy made in a month. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, genuine pleasure in his voice. "Neither was I," Zara admitted, stepping into the apartment. The penthouse was exactly what she'd expected, and nothing like what she'd imagined. It was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. But it was also stark, almost cold in its perfection. Everything was expensive and beautiful, and utterly impersonal. "Welcome to my gilded cage," William said, noticing her expression. "Coffee. Hot chocolate. Hot chocolate sounds good." As William disappeared into the kitchen, Zara wandered through the living room, taking in the details. The furniture was sleek and modern, the kind seen in design magazines. On one wall hung a series of abstract paintings that probably cost more than most people's houses. But there were no family photos, no personal mementos, no signs that anyone actually lived here. It was the saddest beautiful place she'd ever seen. "Here you go," William said, returning with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "I should probably mention that I made some calls last night. I wanted to understand more about competitive chess, about what it takes to develop young talent." Zara accepted the mug, gratefully wrapping her hands around its warmth. "What did you find out?" "That you're even more remarkable than I thought." William sat down across from her on a leather sofa that was probably worth more than a year's rent. "I spoke with a friend who's involved with the Manhattan Chess Club. Based on the games you played yesterday, he estimates your rating somewhere around 2,000. Is that good?" "It's expert level. Most adult players never reach that level, and you've done it at 14, with essentially no formal training." William leaned forward. "Zara, with proper coaching and tournament experience, you could be competing for national championships within a year or 2. The words hung in the air between them. National championships, college scholarships, a future that had seemed impossible just 24 hours ago. "What would that involve?" she asked carefully. "Training with a qualified coach 3 times a week, tournament play on weekends, study materials, analysis, software, entry fees all covered." William paused. "And a place to stay during the week if that would be helpful. I have guest rooms that never get used." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. "Why would you do all this for someone you just met?" William was quiet for a moment, staring out at the view of Central Park. "Do you know what my biggest regret is?" he asked finally. Zara shook her head. "I regret that I never took the time to develop anything in myself that wasn't directly profitable. I learned to analyze markets and manage resources and maximize efficiency, but I never learned to create anything beautiful or meaningful." He looked at her directly. "When I watched you play yesterday, I saw something I've never been able to do. I saw you create art. It's just chess." "No," William said firmly. "What you do is poetry. It's the closest thing to magic I've ever witnessed." He stood and walked to the window. "I can't create that kind of beauty myself, but maybe I can help nurture it in someone who can." Zara set down her mug and joined him at the window. Central Park spread out below them like a green carpet, dotted with tiny figures of people living their lives. Somewhere down there was Bryant Park, where she'd been yesterday morning hustling $5 games and worrying about rent money. "I need to talk to my grandmother," she said finally. "Of course. And if I do this, there have to be rules. Clear boundaries about what you're offering and what you expect in return." "Absolutely. And I want to meet this coach before I agree to anything. I need to know I can work with them." William smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less. You're not just talented, Zara. You're smart about protecting yourself. That's going to serve you well in competition." They spent the next hour discussing practical details. The coach William had in mind was Thomas Chen, a former master who specialized in developing young talent. The training schedule would be flexible around Zara's other commitments. She could stay in the guest room during the week and return to the Bronx on weekends, or commute daily if she preferred. "There's one more thing," William said as they were wrapping up. "I'd like to meet your grandmother. If we're going to be working together, I want her to feel comfortable with the arrangement." Zara studied his face, looking for hidden motives. Instead, she saw something that looked like genuine respect for the woman who'd raised her. "Okay," she said. "But fair warning, Mama Dorothy doesn't impress easily, and she's got a BS detector that could power the whole building." William laughed, the first genuinely relaxed sound she'd heard from him. "I'd be disappointed if she didn't." 3 days later, Zara found herself standing in the same penthouse this time, with a small duffel bag containing everything she owned. That mattered: 3 changes of clothes, her mother's rosary, a photo of her grandfather, and the wooden chess set that had started it all. The meeting with Mama Dorothy had gone better than expected. William had taken the subway to the Bronx, a journey that probably represented the first time he'd used public transportation in years, and spent 2 hours in their tiny apartment drinking tea from chipped mugs and answering every question Mama Dorothy could think of. "That man's got demons," Mama Dorothy had said after he left. "But they're the kind that make you want to be better, not worse. I think you'll be safe with him, baby girl. Just remember who you are and where you come from." Now, standing in the guest bedroom that was larger than the entire apartment she shared with her grandmother Zara, wondered if remembering who she was would be the easiest or hardest part of this new arrangement. "I thought you might want to get settled before Thomas arrives," William said from the doorway. "He should be here around 2. Zara nodded, setting her bag on the bed. The room was beautiful, pale blue walls, a queen-sized bed with more pillows than she'd ever seen in one place, and another wall of windows overlooking the park. But like the rest of the apartment, it felt more like a hotel room than a home. "William," she said as he turned to leave. "Yes, thank you. I know I haven't said it yet, but thank you." His expression softened. "Thank you for giving me the chance to do something meaningful for once." Thomas Chen arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, carrying a leather briefcase and the kind of focused intensity that Zara associated with serious chess players. He was in his 40s, compact and energetic, with quick eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "So you're the prodigy," he said after William had made introductions. "Bill tells me you're playing at expert level with no formal training." "I don't know about prodigy," Zara replied carefully. "I just play chess." Thomas smiled approvingly. "Good answer. In my experience, kids who call themselves prodigies usually plateau quickly. Kids who just want to get better keep improving for years." They settled in William's study, a room lined with books that Zara suspected had been chosen more for their appearance than their content. Thomas unpacked a magnetic demonstration board and several thick volumes of chess analysis. "Before we start working on specific skills," he said, "I want to understand how you think about the game. Let's play a game, but I want you to talk me through your thought process for every move." The resulting game was unlike anything Zara had experienced. Thomas wasn't just a strong player. His rating was over 2,300. he told her later, but he was also a gifted teacher. As they played, he asked questions that forced her to articulate strategies she'd developed intuitively. "Why did you choose that move, instead of developing your bishop?" he asked, after she'd pushed a central pawn. "The bishop can wait," Zara explained. "If I control the center first, I'll have better squares for all my pieces later. Show me." For the next 10 minutes, they analyzed variations with Thomas, demonstrating how different move orders led to different types of positions. It was the first time anyone had ever asked Zara to explain her chess thinking, and she found herself discovering things about her own game that she hadn't consciously understood. "You have excellent positional instincts," Thomas said after she'd won the game in 34 moves. "Your tactical vision is very good, and your endgame technique is surprisingly sophisticated. But there are gaps in your opening knowledge that stronger players will exploit." What kind of gaps? Thomas reset the pieces and showed her several standard opening variations, pointing out where her intuitive moves would get her into trouble against prepared opponents. "The good news is that these are mechanical problems," he said. "They can be fixed with study and practice. The things you can't teach: pattern recognition, strategic understanding, the ability to find creative solutions under pressure. Those you already have." They spent the next 2 hours working through opening principles and basic endgame positions. Thomas was a patient teacher but demanding. He pushed Zara to calculate variations more deeply, to consider alternatives she might have dismissed too quickly. "That's enough for today," he said, finally glancing at his watch. "Your brain needs time to process all this new information. We'll meet again Thursday, same time." After Thomas left, Zara found William in the kitchen working on his laptop while dinner cooked in the oven. "How did it go?" he asked. "He's really good," Zara said, settling into a chair across from him. "Like scary good. But he made me understand things about my own game that I never realized. That's exactly what I hoped would happen." They ate dinner together, takeout from an expensive Italian restaurant that William had delivered, and talked about chess, about school, about Zara's goals for the future. It was the most normal conversation she'd had with an adult in months, and it made her realize how much she'd missed having someone to talk to about ideas rather than just survival. But that night, lying in the unfamiliar bed in the guest room, Zara felt a wave of homesickness so intense it was almost physical. She missed the familiar sounds of the Bronx traffic and sirens and the neighbor's television. She missed the cramped kitchen where she and Mama Dorothy ate breakfast together every morning. She missed feeling like she belonged somewhere. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. "How's the fancy apartment, baby girl?" "Beautiful but weird," Zara typed back. "Too quiet. I keep expecting to hear Mrs. Chen practicing violin." "You give it time. Sometimes the best opportunities come wrapped in packages that don't look like home." "What if I forget who I am?" The response came quickly. "Impossible. I made sure that girl is built too strong to break." Zara smiled for the first time since arriving. Mama Dorothy was right. She could learn to navigate this new world without losing herself in it. She could become the chess player she was meant to be, while staying the granddaughter Marcus and Dorothy Williams had raised. It would just take time to figure out how. The next morning she woke to the smell of coffee and something that might have been pancakes. She found William in the kitchen, standing over the stove with a slightly panicked expression. "I should probably mention that I don't actually cook," he said, gesturing to what appeared to be smoke rising from a frying pan. "I was trying to make breakfast, but I think I'm failing." Zara laughed, the first completely unself-conscious sound she'd made since arriving. "Move over. Mama Dorothy taught me to cook when I was 8. 20 minutes later, they were eating perfectly fluffy pancakes and bacon that was crispy but not burnt. William watched her work with something approaching awe. "How did you do that?" "Practice," Zara said simply. "When you're responsible for feeding yourself and someone else, you learn fast." I've been eating takeout and restaurant food for so long that I'd forgotten what home cooking tastes like. This is just basic stuff. Mama Dorothy can make magic happen with a can of beans and some rice. William was quiet for a moment. Would you teach me? He asked finally. To cook, to feel at home in my own kitchen, to make something with my hands instead of just buying it. Zara studied his face, seeing past the expensive haircut and designer clothes to something that looked almost vulnerable. Okay, she said. But you have to promise not to burn down your own apartment. Deal. That afternoon, while William worked in his home office, Zara explored the building and the surrounding neighborhood. The doorman, whose name was Carlos, turned out to be from the Dominican Republic and spoke Spanish with Mrs. Martinez, the building's head of housekeeping. You're staying with Mr. Harrison? Mrs. Martinez asked in accented English, her expression concerned. Just temporarily, Zara explained. He's helping me with chess training. He's a good man, Mrs. Martinez said after a moment. Lonely, but good. He always treats the staff with respect, always says please and thank you. Some of the other residents. She shrugged eloquently. How long have you worked here? 15 years. I cleaned his apartment when he first moved in with his wife and little boy. Very sad when they left. That evening, Zara video called Mama Dorothy from the study, giving her a virtual tour of the apartment and catching up on neighborhood news. Everything was fine, her grandmother assured her, though she missed having someone to cook for. The Gonzalez boy asked about you, Mama Dorothy said. Miguel. He wanted to know if you were coming back to play chess with him. Miguel was 8 years old and lived next door with his parents and 3 sisters. Zara had been teaching him basic chess moves for months, using a set made from bottle caps and cardboard. Tell him I'll be back this weekend, Zara said, and tell him to keep practicing what I showed him. I will. Now tell me about this coach of yours. Zara described her session with Thomas, the way he'd pushed her to think more deeply about positions she thought she understood. Sounds like he's going to challenge you, Mama Dorothy said approvingly. That's good. Easy things don't make you grow. I miss you, Zara said suddenly. I miss you too, baby girl. But I'm proud of you for being brave enough to try something new. After the call ended, Zara found William in the living room, reading a book about chess strategy. He looked up as she entered. How's your grandmother? Good. She says to tell you that if you don't take proper care of me, she's going to take the subway up here and explain proper manners to you personally. William grinned. I like her more every time you tell me something she said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both reading. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but the penthouse felt like an island of calm, 32 floors above the chaos. William, Zara said eventually. Why did you and your wife get divorced? Really? He set down his book and was quiet for a long moment. Because I forgot that success means nothing if you don't have anyone to share it with, he said finally. I thought providing for my family meant working all the time, earning more money, building something they could be proud of. But what they really wanted was just for me to be present. Do you regret it? Every day. But regret without action is just self-pity. The question is what you do with the knowledge. Zara nodded, thinking about her own life, about the choices that had led her to this moment. I want to call my mom sometimes, she said quietly. Not because I forgot she's gone, but because I want to tell her about things that are happening. Like this. I want to tell her that her daughter might actually make something of herself. She knows, William said gently. I'm not particularly religious, but I have to believe that the people who love us stay connected to our lives somehow. That night, Zara fell asleep thinking about connections to family, to place, to purpose. She was beginning to understand that home wasn't just a location, but a feeling of belonging somewhere. Maybe she could create that feeling in this strange new environment. Maybe she could build bridges between the world she came from and the world she was entering. Maybe she could have both. By the end of her first week in the penthouse, Zara had established a routine that felt almost normal. Mornings began with the cooking lessons she'd promised William, simple dishes that gradually grew more ambitious as his confidence increased. Afternoons were devoted to chess training with Thomas, who arrived 3 times a week with new materials and increasingly challenging exercises. "Today, we're working on tactical combinations," Thomas announced on Thursday, setting up a position on the demonstration board. "This is from a game between Kasparov and Karpov in 1984. White to move and win." Zara studied the position for several minutes, her eyes moving across the board as she calculated variations. The position looked roughly equal at first glance, but there was something about the placement of the black king that suggested hidden tactics. "Queen takes bishop," she said, finally pointing to the capture. "Show me the follow-up." For the next 20 minutes, they analyzed the combination with Thomas, explaining how world-class players found such sequences under tournament pressure. It was the kind of detailed analysis that Zara had never had access to before, and she absorbed every detail hungrily. "Your pattern recognition is getting stronger," Thomas observed as they finished the lesson. "Last week, this combination would have taken you twice as long to spot." "It's like learning a new language," Zara said. "The more patterns I see, the faster I can recognize similar ideas in different positions." "Exactly. Chess improvement isn't linear. It happens in jumps. You study for weeks without feeling much progress, then suddenly everything clicks and you're playing at a new level." After Thomas left, Zara found William in his office, speaking rapidly into his phone in what sounded like a tense business conversation. She retreated to the kitchen and started preparing dinner, something that had become her contribution to their shared routine. "Sorry about that," William said when he finally emerged from his office an hour later. "Supply chain crisis." "Sometimes I think running a tech company is more stressful than any chess game." "At least in chess, you know who your opponent is," Zara replied, stirring a pot of rice and beans, comfort food that reminded her of home. "True. In business, sometimes your partners are your competitors, and your competitors become your partners, all in the same day." He sat down at the kitchen counter watching her work. "That smells incredible. Mama Dorothy's recipe. She says the secret is letting the sofrito cook long enough to develop real flavor." They ate dinner while William told her about his company's latest project, a logistics system that would help medical supplies reach underserved communities more efficiently. Despite herself, Zara found the work interesting. It was the first time she'd seen William truly excited about his business, animated by the possibility of using his resources to solve meaningful problems. "Have you ever thought about expanding into education?" she asked. "Like developing software to help schools in poor neighborhoods?" William paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. "What kind of software, I don't know exactly. But I know that schools in the Bronx have completely different problems than schools in Manhattan. Maybe something that helps teachers track which kids are falling behind, or connects students with tutoring resources, or helps families navigate college applications." "That's actually brilliant," William said slowly. "I've been so focused on logistics and supply chains that I never thought about applying the same principles to educational equity. You should talk to some teachers. See what they actually need instead of what tech companies think they need." They spent the rest of dinner discussing possibilities with Zara, describing the challenges she'd observed in her own school, and William explaining how technology might address some of those problems. It was the kind of conversation that made both of them forget about the vast differences in their backgrounds and focus on shared interests. Later that evening, as Zara was video calling with Mama Dorothy, William knocked on her bedroom door. "I don't want to interrupt," he said. but I wanted to ask if your grandmother would be willing to talk with me about education in the Bronx. After our conversation at dinner, I'm thinking seriously about that software idea." Zara covered the phone. "Mama Dorothy, William wants to ask you about schools in our neighborhood. He's thinking about developing some kind of educational software." "Put him on," came the immediate response. For the next 45 minutes, Zara watched as William peppered her grandmother with questions about everything from class sizes to technology resources to parent engagement. Mama Dorothy, who had worked as a teacher's aide for 10 years before becoming a home health worker, had strong opinions about what worked and what didn't in urban education. "Most of these tech solutions are designed by people who've never set foot in a public school," she told William bluntly. "They think all problems can be solved with apps and algorithms, but education is about relationships. You want to help kids learn, you better understand the communities they come from." "How would you suggest I learn about that?" William asked. "Come spend a day at PS 147. Shadow. Some teachers talk to some parents. See what these kids are actually dealing with." Mama Dorothy's voice softened slightly. "You seem like a good man, Mr. Harrison. But good intentions aren't enough if you don't understand the reality on the ground." After the call ended, William was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother is formidable," he said finally. "She doesn't suffer fools," Zara agreed. "But she also doesn't waste time on people she doesn't think are worth educating. The fact that she talked to you for 45 minutes means she sees potential in you. I'm going to take her up on that suggestion about visiting the school. Really. I've spent my entire career making assumptions about markets I've never experienced. Maybe it's time to actually show up and listen." The next morning brought Zara's first weekend in the penthouse, and with it, a wave of homesickness that was stronger than any she'd felt so far. She missed the familiar chaos of her neighborhood, the way Mrs. Gonzalez always had the radio playing merengue music, the smell of plantains frying in apartments up and down the hallway. "You're going home today, aren't you?" William said, finding her standing at the window with her overnight bag packed. "Is that okay?" "Of course. This is your schedule, not mine." He paused. "But would you mind if I came with you? I'd like to see your neighborhood, maybe meet some of the people you've told me about." Zara studied his face, looking for signs of condescension or voyeurism. Instead, she saw genuine curiosity and something that might have been nervousness. "It's not going to be what you're used to," she warned. "I hope not. I've been insulated from reality for too long." An hour later, they emerged from the subway station at 149th Street in Grand Concourse, and Zara watched William take in the sights and sounds of the South Bronx. It wasn't the devastated wasteland that appeared in movies, but it wasn't the sanitized version of urban life that existed in Manhattan either. It was real and complicated, and alive in ways that probably seemed overwhelming to someone accustomed to the controlled environment of Upper East Side wealth. "This is it," Zara said as they approached her building. "Home sweet home." The elevator was still broken, so they climbed 4 flights of stairs that smelled like cooking food and industrial disinfectant. On the second floor, a woman was mopping the hallway while keeping an eye on 3 small children who were playing with toy cars in the stairwell. "Morning, Mrs. Gonzalez," Zara called. "Zara, mija, we missed you. Miguel's been asking every day when you're coming home." "I'm here now." "Is he around?" "Of course. Miguel." "Come say hello to Zara." A few minutes later, they were surrounded by children from the building, all eager to tell Zara about their week and show off the chess moves they'd been practicing. William hung back, watching with an expression of wonder as Zara transformed from the serious student he'd been living with into the big sister figure these kids clearly adored. "This is my friend William," Zara said, eventually gesturing for him to join the group. "William, this is Miguel and Sophia and Danny and Carmen. Nice to meet you all," William said, crouching down to their eye level. Zara tells me you've been learning chess. I can do the Queen's Gambit, Miguel announced proudly, then proceeded to demonstrate with a miniature set that was missing several pieces. That's very impressive, Williams said seriously. The Queen's Gambit is advanced strategy. For the next 20 minutes, he let the children teach him their versions of various chess openings, praising their creativity and asking thoughtful questions about their reasoning. Zara watched in amazement as this man who controlled $100 million company gave his complete attention to a group of kids who were excited to show off their knowledge. "He's nice," Sophia whispered to Zara in Spanish. "Is he your boyfriend?" "No," Zara replied also in Spanish. "He's helping me learn to be a better chess player." "Oh, well, he's still nice." When they finally made it to Mama Dorothy's apartment, William was greeted like an old friend. Mama Dorothy had spent the morning cooking, and the small kitchen was filled with the aromas of rice and beans, fried plantains, and her famous flan. "Mr. Harrison." "Welcome to our home," she said, embracing him warmly. "I hope you brought your appetite." Over lunch, William asked more questions about the neighborhood, about the challenges families faced, about the resources that were available, and those that were missing. He listened without trying to offer immediate solutions, asking for clarification when he didn't understand something, and acknowledging the complexity of problems he'd never had to consider. "The thing people don't understand about poverty," Mama Dorothy said as they finished eating, "is that it's not just about money. It's about having to make impossible choices every day. Do you pay the electric bill or buy groceries? Do you take your sick child to the doctor or go to work so you don't lose your job? Do you move to a better neighborhood and lose your support system? Or stay somewhere familiar but limited? How do you make those choices?" William asked. "You do the best you can with what you have, and you hope your children have better options than you did." She looked at Zara with obvious pride. "This girl right here is my hope made real. All the sacrifices, all the hard choices they're worth it if she gets to live a life where she doesn't have to choose between dreams and survival." After lunch, Zara took William on a walking tour of the neighborhood. They visited the corner store, where she bought groceries, the laundromat where she and Mama Dorothy did their washing, the small park where she'd first learned to play chess with her grandfather. "It's not much," she said, as they sat on a bench watching children play on the worn playground equipment. "But it's mine, you know. These people know me, care about me, celebrate my victories, and worry about my problems." "I can see that," William said, "and I can see why you'd be hesitant to leave it behind." "That's just it. I don't want to leave it behind. I want to carry it with me." Zara turned to face him. "If I become successful at chess, if I get opportunities to travel and compete, and maybe go to college, I want to stay connected to this place. I want my success to mean something for the kids in this neighborhood, like Miguel and Sophia, like all of them, like the kids who are smarter than me, but don't get chances to show it, like the ones who have incredible talent, but no one to nurture it." William was quiet for a long moment, watching the children play. "What if we could change that?" he said finally. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if your chess training was just the beginning? What if we could create opportunities for other kids like you?" Zara felt something spark in her chest, a feeling she'd learned to recognize as the beginning of an idea that might actually work. "Tell me more," she said. That evening, back in the penthouse, they sat at the kitchen table with legal pads and laptops, sketching out the framework for what would eventually become the Dorothy Williams Chess Foundation. The basic concept was simple: identify talented children from underserved communities and provide them with the same kind of support Zara was receiving: coaching equipment, tournament fees, and mentorship. "We'd need to start small," William said, typing notes as they talked. "Maybe sponsor 5 or 6 kids the first year, see what works and what doesn't. And we'd need coaches who understand where these kids are coming from, Zara added. People like Thomas are great, but they need to be paired with mentors who can help with the cultural navigation. You mean people like you? Eventually, yeah. But we'd need a whole network of support. Zara drew circles on her legal pad, connecting them with lines. Coaches, mentors, families, schools, tournament organizers, everyone working together. They worked until nearly midnight, building the structure of something that felt both ambitious and achievable. When they finally called it a night, Zara felt more energized than she had in weeks. "This could really work," she said as they turned off the lights. "I think it will work," William replied. "But even if it doesn't, even if we only help 1 or 2 kids, it'll be worth doing." Why? Because everyone deserves a chance to find out how far their talent can take them. You taught me that. That night, Zara lay in her bed thinking about possibility and responsibility. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt like she was part of something larger than survival. She was part of building something that could outlast her own success or failure. It was a good feeling. The Washington Heights Chess Open was held in the basement of a community center that smelled like industrial coffee and decades of folding chairs. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across 30 wooden tables, where players ranging in age from 8 to 80 sat hunched over their boards in concentration. Zara had been preparing for this tournament for 6 weeks, studying openings with Thomas and playing practice games against increasingly strong opponents that William had recruited from the Manhattan Chess Club. But walking into the tournament hall on a cold Saturday morning in February, she felt like she was entering alien territory. "Remember," Thomas said as they found the registration table, "this is just chess. The same game you've been playing your whole life. The only difference is the clock and the notation sheets, and the fact that everyone here has been playing in tournaments since they were 5 years old," Zara muttered, watching a group of kids who couldn't have been older than 10, discussing obscure variations of the Sicilian defense. "Most of them, yes," Thomas agreed. "But most of them have also never had to figure out how to win games for grocery money. You have something they don't, the ability to stay calm under real pressure." William appeared at her elbow carrying a cup of coffee and wearing the kind of nervous expression that usually appeared on parents' faces at these events. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to find out how much I don't know about chess," Zara replied honestly. "Good," Thomas said approvingly. "Confidence is important, but overconfidence is deadly in tournament play." The tournament director called for attention, and Zara found herself surrounded by about 60 players of various ages and backgrounds. She was one of only 3 black players in the room, and the only one under the age of 40. Several parents were taking photos of their children, and she caught a few curious glances in her direction. "This is a 5-round Swiss system tournament," the director announced. "Time control is game in 90 minutes with a 30-second increment. First-round pairings are posted on the wall." Zara found her name paired against a boy named David Kim, rated 1847. Her own rating was listed as unrated, which felt like wearing a sign that said, "Inexperienced" in bold letters. "David's a solid player," Thomas said, reviewing the pairing. "He's been competing for about 3 years. Mostly tactical player, but sound positionally. Just play your game, and don't try to do anything fancy." Board 12 was in the middle of the room, surrounded by the quiet intensity that Zara had learned to associate with serious chess. David Kim turned out to be a polite 14-year-old who shook her hand firmly and wished her good luck with genuine sincerity. "First tournament?" he asked as they set up their pieces. "Yeah. You about my 30th, I think. Don't worry, you get used to the noise and the time pressure." He smiled encouragingly. "Just pretend we're playing in your living room." The tournament director called for play to begin, and David pressed his clock to start Zara's time. She had practiced this moment dozens of times with Thomas, but her heart was still racing as she moved her king's pawn 2 squares forward. David responded with the Sicilian defense, and they were immediately in territory that Zara had studied extensively. For the first 15 moves, the game followed theoretical lines that she knew well. But then David played a novelty, a move that deviated from the standard continuation. And suddenly, she was on her own. The next 40 minutes were the most intense chess Zara had ever played. David was clearly experienced at tournament play, managing his time carefully and maintaining perfect posture throughout the game. But as they moved into the middle game, Zara began to feel more comfortable. The position on the board was what mattered, not the setting or the stakes. On move 28, she found a tactical blow that won David's rook for a bishop and a pawn. The evaluation swung decisively in her favor, and 10 moves later, David extended his hand in resignation. "Great game," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "That combination on move 28 was really nice. I didn't see it coming at all." "Thanks. You played really well too." As they filled out their notation sheets and reported the result, Zara felt a surge of confidence that had nothing to do with winning and everything to do with belonging. She had just played a real tournament game against an experienced opponent and held her own. More than that, she had demonstrated that her chess skills translated to the formal competitive environment. "How did it feel?" William asked as she joined him and Thomas near the snack table. "Different than I expected. Harder in some ways, easier in others." Zara accepted a bottle of water gratefully. "The time pressure makes you think differently. But once I got into the game, it was just chess." "The combination you played on move 28 was textbook," Thomas added, reviewing her notation sheet. "Perfect timing. Perfect execution. David never had a chance once you found that sequence." The second round was scheduled to begin in an hour, giving players time to eat lunch and analyze their games. Zara found herself sitting with a group of other first-time tournament players, comparing notes about the experience and sharing nervous energy about the rounds to come. "Is it always this intense?" asked a girl named Sarah, who looked about 12 years old. "You get used to it," replied an older player who had overheard. "After a while, you start to enjoy the pressure. It brings out the best in your play. Or the worst," added another voice. "I've seen players completely collapse under tournament pressure." Zara listened to the conversation while reviewing her game against David, looking for moments where she could have played more accurately. It was a habit Thomas had taught her. Win or lose, every game contained lessons that could improve her future play. Her second-round opponent was Maria Rodriguez, a 16-year-old from Queens, who had been playing competitively for 4 years. Maria was clearly more experienced, moving quickly through the opening phase and maintaining a confident demeanor throughout the early game. But as they reached the middle game, Zara began to notice small inaccuracies in Maria's play moves that weren't mistakes exactly, but weren't quite optimal either. She began to press for small advantages, gradually improving her position while maintaining solid defenses. The game lasted nearly 3 hours, with both players using almost all of their allotted time. In the end, Zara converted a small endgame advantage into a winning position, though Maria made her work for every step of the victory. "That was a really tough game," Maria said as they shook hands. "You play much stronger than an unrated player." "Have you been studying with a coach?" "For a few weeks, yeah. It shows. Your endgame technique is really solid." Maria paused. "Where do you usually play? I haven't seen you at tournaments before." "This is my first tournament. I usually play in Bryant Park." Maria's eyebrows rose. "You're a park player." "That's impressive. Most park players can't make the transition to tournament chess." After 2 rounds, Zara was tied for first place with 4 other players, all of whom had won both their games. The pairings for round 3 matched her against Robert Chen. No relation to Thomas, a 17-year-old rated 1923 who had a reputation as a tactical wizard. Robert's dangerous Thomas warned during the dinner break. "He's not the strongest positional player, but he can calculate complex variations faster than almost anyone in his age group. Don't let him drag you into sharp, tactical battles unless you're sure you can outcalculate him. How do I avoid tactical complications? Choose quieter openings. Focus on positional play. Trade pieces when you have the advantage. Thomas smiled. In other words, play your natural style. Your positional understanding is your biggest strength. The third round began at 7 p.m., with the tournament hall noticeably quieter as the weaker players had been eliminated or were playing in the lower sections. Robert Chen looked like he stepped out of a chess magazine. Perfectly organized pieces. Digital clock, set to precise specifications. Notation sheets, arranged just so. Good luck, he said as they shook hands, but his tone suggested he didn't think she'd need much of it. Zara chose a quiet Queen's Gambit opening, aiming for the kind of positional game that Thomas had recommended. But Robert responded aggressively, declining the gambit and immediately challenging her central control. Within 10 moves, they were in exactly the kind of sharp tactical battle that she'd hoped to avoid. For the next 2 hours, Zara found herself calculating variations more deeply than she ever had before. Robert lived up to his reputation, finding tactical resources that forced her to constantly reevaluate her position. But somewhere around move 25, she began to sense that his tactical pyrotechnics were masking positional weaknesses. While Robert was focused on immediate threats and clever combinations, Zara quietly improved her piece coordination and gradually gained control of key squares. When the tactics finally settled down around move 35, she found herself with a clearly superior position, despite being down a pawn. Nice positional play, Robert murmured, as he studied the board, seeing the extent of his positional disadvantage for the first time. The endgame was technically challenging, but Zara had spent hours studying similar positions with Thomas. She converted her advantage methodically, showing the kind of technique that comes from deep understanding rather than memorized patterns. When Robert finally resigned on move 58, the tournament hall had grown quiet. Most of the other games had finished, and several players had gathered to watch the conclusion of their game. That was really impressive, Robert said as they filled out their score sheets. I thought I had good chances when we got into that tactical sequence around move 20, but you just kept finding the best moves. Your endgame technique is master level. Thanks. You pushed me harder than anyone I've played before. As they reported their result, Zara realized she was now in clear first place with 3 wins and 2 rounds remaining. The tournament director announced the pairings for round 4, and she found herself matched against James Mitchell, a 19-year-old college student, rated 20 and 34. You're in the lead, William observed, as they reviewed her games during the evening break. How does that feel? Terrifying, Zara admitted. I keep expecting to run into someone who's just way better than me and get crushed. That might happen, Thomas said pragmatically, but it might not. You've already proven you can compete at this level. The question now is whether you can handle the pressure of being the hunter instead of the hunted. What do you mean? I mean that for the first 3 rounds you were the unknown quantity. Your opponents underestimated you, which gave you psychological advantages. Thomas sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Now everyone knows you're a serious player. They'll be prepared for you. The 4th round began at 9 a.m. on Sunday, with Zara facing James Mitchell across board 1, the position reserved for the top-rated matchup in each round. She could feel eyes on her as she set up her pieces, aware that several other players and parents were watching to see how the tournament's surprise leader would handle the pressure. James was clearly experienced at playing in pressure situations. He moved confidently through the opening, maintaining perfect time management and showing no signs of nervousness. For the first time in the tournament, Zara felt like she was facing someone who was definitively stronger than her. The game that followed was the most challenging chess Zara had ever played. James demonstrated the difference between natural talent and trained skill, finding resources in positions where she thought she had gained advantages, and defending accurately in situations where lesser players would have collapsed. After 4 hours of play, with both players down to their final minutes on the clock, the position was still roughly equal. Zara had managed to hold her own, but she hadn't been able to generate the kind of winning chances she'd found in her previous games. In the final time scramble, both players were moving almost instantly, relying on instinct and pattern recognition to navigate the complications. With less than 30 seconds remaining on both clocks, James offered a draw. Zara stared at the position for 10 seconds that felt like forever. She was still in first place, and a draw would almost certainly guarantee her a share of the tournament victory. But she could see a possible continuation that might give her winning chances if she was willing to risk everything on a single variation. "I'll play on," she said, declining the draw offer. James looked surprised, but nodded respectfully. The next 10 moves were played in less than 2 minutes, with both players moving pieces almost before their opponents had completed their moves. In the final position, with less than 5 seconds on both clocks, Zara found a tactical shot that won James's queen for a rook and bishop. Time the tournament director called, but James had already tipped over his king in resignation. The tournament hall erupted in applause, the first sound louder than whispers that had been heard all weekend. Zara sat back in her chair, hardly believing what had just happened. She had not only held her own against a master-level player, but had found a way to win in the most pressure-packed situation of her life. "That was incredible," James said, shaking her hand enthusiastically. "I've never seen anyone your age handle time pressure like that. You're going to be a really strong player in a few years." "Thanks. That was the hardest game I've ever played." "It should be. You just beat someone rated over 2,000 in a tournament game. That's not something many people can do." With 1 round remaining, Zara needed only a draw to win the tournament outright. Her final opponent was Angela Martinez, a 15-year-old from Brooklyn, who had also surprised everyone by winning 4 of her first 4 games. "Looks like it's all or nothing," Angela said as they shook hands before the final round. "Winner takes first place. May the best player win." Zara replied, meaning it. The final game was less sharp than her battle with James, but no less challenging. Angela played solid principled chess, avoiding unnecessary risks while probing for small advantages. For most of the game, the position remained balanced, with neither player able to generate significant winning chances. As they reached the endgame, Zara found herself with a slight advantage, an extra pawn in a rook, ending that theory suggested should be winning with accurate play. But Angela defended tenaciously, finding the most resilient defensive setup and forcing Zara to demonstrate precise technique. The conversion took nearly 2 hours, with Zara gradually improving her position, while Angela looked for tactical tricks that might save the game. In the end, technique prevailed over resistance, and Angela resigned when the win became mathematically inevitable. "Congratulations," Angela said warmly. "That was really well played. I've never seen anyone our age play endgames like that." The closing ceremony was a blur of handshakes and photographs. Zara found herself holding a trophy that was almost as tall as she was, posing for pictures with William and Thomas, and accepting congratulations from players who had watched her games throughout the weekend. "Ladies and gentlemen, the tournament director announced our winner with a perfect score of 5 wins and 0 losses, earning her first USCF rating of 2,089. Please welcome Zara Williams." The applause was genuine and sustained. In a single weekend, she had announced herself as a serious competitive player and earned a rating that put her in the top 5% of all chess players in the country. "How does it feel to be an expert?" Thomas asked as they loaded her trophy into William's car. "Unreal," Zara said honestly. 3 months ago I was playing $5 games in the park. Now I'm an expert-rated player. It doesn't seem possible." "It's possible because you made it possible," Williams said from the driver's seat. "No one gave you this success. You earned every bit of it." As they drove back toward Manhattan, Zara stared out the window at the city passing by. Everything looked the same as it had that morning, but somehow felt completely different. She was no longer an unknown quantity, no longer someone whose talent was purely theoretical. She was Zara Williams, expert-rated chess player tournament winner. Someone who had proven she belonged at the highest levels of competition. But more importantly, she was still Zara Williams' granddaughter of Dorothy Williams, student of Marcus Williams's wisdom, and member of a community that had shaped her into someone who could handle success without losing herself. The first sign that things were changing came on Monday morning, when Zara's phone buzzed with a notification from the U.S. Chess Federation website. Someone had posted the tournament results online, along with a story about the mystery player who had won the Washington Heights Open with a perfect score. 14-year-old Zara Williams shocked the New York chess scene this weekend. The article began emerging from nowhere to claim victory in the Washington Heights Open with a perfect 5-0 score. Williams, previously unrated, earned an impressive 2,089 rating in her tournament debut, putting her among the strongest junior players in the region. "Listen to this," she called to William, who was attempting to make scrambled eggs without burning them. "The article says I emerged from nowhere. I've been playing chess for 8 years. Chess people have short memories." William replied successfully, transferring the eggs to a plate without major incident. "If they haven't seen you at tournaments, you don't exist in their world." The phone rang before Zara could respond. Thomas's voice was excited as it crackled through the speaker. "Have you seen the chess forums this morning? Everyone's talking about your tournament. There are 3 different threads analyzing your games, and someone started a discussion about the strongest unrated players in tournament history. Is that good or bad? Mostly good, but you should probably prepare for some attention. The chess world is small, and when someone new appears at expert level, people notice." Thomas was right about the attention. By Wednesday, Zara had received emails from 5 different chess coaches offering their services, 2 invitations to elite training camps, and a request for an interview from Chess Life magazine. The Manhattan Chess Club called to offer her a full membership, waiving the usual fees and requirements. "This is happening fast," William observed, as they reviewed the offers over dinner. "How do you want to handle it?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "Part of me is excited that people recognize what I accomplished, but part of me wonders what they want from me." "What do you mean?" "I mean, are they interested in me as a chess player or as a story? The poor black girl from the Bronx who learned to play in the park. That's a good narrative for them, right?" William set down his fork, considering her words carefully. "You're right to be cautious. Some people will definitely be more interested in your background than your chess. But some will genuinely respect your ability and want to help you develop it." "How do I tell the difference?" "By listening to what they focus on. If someone talks more about where you came from than where you're going, be wary. If they want to help you improve as a player, that's different." That Friday, Zara got her first real taste of chess world politics when she attended a reception at the Manhattan Chess Club. Thomas had suggested it as a good way to meet other serious players and coaches. But Zara quickly realized she was more of an attraction than a participant. "So, you're the famous park player," said a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as the mother of a junior champion. "How fascinating. Tell me, where did you learn proper tournament etiquette?" "The same place I learned chess," Zara replied evenly. "From people who understood that respect matters more than where you're sitting when you show it." The woman blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct response. Before she could reply, a familiar voice interrupted. "Zara, I was hoping you'd be here." She turned to see David Kim, her first-round opponent from the Washington Heights Open, approaching with a genuine smile. "David, hi. How are you?" "Good. I wanted to congratulate you again on winning the tournament. I've been analyzing our game, and I found at least 3 places where I could have played better." They spent the next 20 minutes discussing chess positions with David, showing her some variations he'd discovered in their game. It was the first conversation of the evening that focused entirely on chess, rather than her background or story. "Thanks for that," she said as other players drifted over to join their discussion. "For what?" "For talking to me about chess instead of treating me like a curiosity." David looked confused for a moment. Then understanding dawned. "Oh, yeah. Some people here can be weird about new players, especially ones who don't fit their expectations. Don't let it bother you. The chess speaks for itself." As the evening progressed, Zara met several players and coaches who seemed genuinely interested in her development as a player. But she also encountered the other type people who asked probing questions about her background and seemed more interested in her story than her games. The important thing is to stay focused on why you're here. Thomas reminded her on the subway ride home. You're not here to be anyone's inspiration story or diversity poster child. You're here to become the strongest chess player you can be. But what if those things are connected? What if becoming a strong player means I automatically become a symbol, whether I want to or not? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then you make sure you control the narrative instead of letting it control you. The next week brought an unexpected visitor to Williams' penthouse. Zara was working through a tactical puzzle book when the doorman called to announce that a Ms. Patricia Winters from Chess Life magazine was downstairs. "I didn't know we had an interview scheduled," Zara said to William. "We don't." "Want me to send her away?" Zara considered for a moment. "No, let's see what she wants. But you stay in the room, okay?" "Patricia." Winters turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, who carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting the interviews she wanted. She set up a digital recorder on the coffee table and pulled out a notebook filled with questions. "Thank you for seeing me," she began. "I have to say your tournament victory has caused quite a stir in the chess community. A perfect score in your first tournament is almost unheard of." "I was fortunate to play well when it mattered," Zara replied carefully. "Fortunate, I think it was more than luck. Tell me about learning chess in Bryant Park. That must have been quite different from traditional chess education." For the next hour, Patricia asked questions that walked the line between legitimate chess journalism and invasive personal inquiry. She wanted to know about Zara's family situation, her financial circumstances, her educational background. Some questions were reasonable, but others felt like attempts to mine her story for dramatic details. "I understand your mother passed away recently," Patricia said at one point. "How has that affected your chess development?" Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "I'd prefer not to discuss my mother." "Of course I understand, but our readers would be interested in how personal challenges have shaped your approach to the game." "My approach to the game comes from studying and practicing," Zara said firmly. "Personal details aren't relevant to chess ability." Patricia smiled, but there was something predatory in the expression. "Well, they're relevant to human interest, which is what sells magazines. Chess readers love stories about overcoming adversity." "I'm not interested in being anyone's adversity story," Zara replied. "I'm interested in being recognized as a chess player." After Patricia left, William shook his head in disgust. That wasn't journalism, that was exploitation disguised as journalism. Will she write the article anyway? Probably. But you handled it perfectly. You gave her enough cooperation to seem reasonable, but you didn't give her the emotional content she was really after. I felt like I was being hunted. In a way you were. Success makes you visible. And visibility attracts both genuine supporters and people who want to use your story for their own purposes. That evening, Zara called Mama Dorothy to vent about the interview and the growing attention from the chess world. "Baby girl, let me tell you something about success," her grandmother said. "It's like carrying a bright light in a dark room. Some people are drawn to the light because they want to share its warmth. Others are drawn to it because they want to steal the light for themselves. Your job is to keep shining while learning to tell the difference." "How do I do that?" "You remember why you started playing chess in the first place. It wasn't for fame or attention or to make other people feel good about themselves. It was because you loved the game and you were good at it. But what if the attention helps me get opportunities? What if playing along with their narrative opens doors? Then you use those opportunities to build something better. But you never let anyone else define who you are or why you matter." 2 weeks later, the Chess Life article appeared, and Zara understood what Mama Dorothy had meant about people trying to steal her light. The piece was titled, "From the Streets to Success, a Chess Cinderella Story," and while it mentioned her tournament victory, it focused primarily on her background and circumstances. Williams represents the untapped potential that exists in underserved communities across America, the article concluded. Her success reminds us that talent knows no zip code and that chess can be a vehicle for social mobility when proper support is provided. "It's not wrong," Williams said as they read the article together. "But it's not complete either. It makes your success seem like charity rather than achievement. That's exactly what bothers me about it. It makes it sound like I'm successful because people helped me, not because I worked for it. Both things can be true. You worked incredibly hard, and you also received support that made your success possible. The problem is when people only want to focus on one part of the story." The article's publication brought a new wave of attention, some positive and some less so. Zara received messages of support from other young players and coaches who appreciated her commitment to letting her chess speak for itself. But she also received comments from people who seemed to think her success was primarily about representation rather than skill. "The thing that frustrates me," she told Thomas during their next training session, "is that some people act like I won that tournament because I'm black, and other people act like I won it despite being black. Neither group seems to think I won it because I played the best chess." "Welcome to being a visible minority in a predominantly white space," Thomas replied pragmatically. "Your success will always be filtered through other people's preconceptions about race and class and gender. The question is whether you let that affect how you approach the game. How do I not let it affect me? By focusing on what you can control. You can't control how other people interpret your success, but you can control how well you play chess. And every game you win on merit makes it harder for people to dismiss your achievements." 3 weeks after the Chess Life article appeared, Zara received an invitation that changed everything. The U.S. Junior Chess Championship Selection Committee wanted her to participate in the qualifying tournament for the national team. "This is huge," Thomas said when she showed him the letter. "The Junior Championship is the most prestigious tournament for players under 18. Winners get automatic invitations to international competitions. Do you think I'm ready? Rating-wise, you're definitely qualified. The question is whether you're ready for the pressure and the level of competition. This won't be like the Washington Heights Open. Every player there will be at least as strong as James Mitchell, and most will be stronger. When is it? 6 months from now, which gives us time to prepare properly." Thomas smiled. "If you want to do this, we need to create a serious training program. No more casual lessons 3 times a week. We're talking about daily preparation, intensive study practice games against masters." Zara looked at the invitation letter again, seeing both opportunity and responsibility in the elegant letterhead. This was what she'd dreamed of since that first game with William in Bryant Park. a chance to compete at the highest level, to find out how far her talent could take her. But it was also a step into a world where she'd be even more visible, more scrutinized, more likely to be seen as a symbol rather than simply a chess player. "I want to do it," she said finally, "but I want to do it on my terms." What does that mean? It means I'm going to be the best prepared player in that tournament. It means I'm going to earn my place there so clearly that no one can question whether I belong. And it means I'm going to use whatever platform this gives me to create opportunities for other kids like me. Thomas nodded approvingly. Then let's get to work. The transformation of Zara's training regimen was immediate and total. Where she had previously studied chess 3 afternoons a week, she now worked with Thomas 6 days a week, alternating between tactical drills, opening preparation endgame study, and practice games against increasingly strong opponents. The junior championship field will include players rated up to 2,400, Thomas explained during their first intensive session. That means you'll be facing opponents who are 300 rating points stronger than you. The only way to bridge that gap is through preparation. William had converted one of his guest rooms into a dedicated chess study, complete with multiple boards, a library of chess books, and a high-end computer loaded with the latest analysis software. The walls were covered with position diagrams from famous games, and a large magnetic board served as their primary teaching tool. This position is from Karpov-Kasparov, 1984. Thomas said, setting up pieces on the demonstration board. White has just played QD3. What's Black's best response? Zara studied the position for several minutes, calculating variations and evaluating different candidate moves. The level of precision required for these exercises was far beyond anything she'd encountered before. Knight to f4, she said finally. It attacks the queen and threatens a fork on e2. Good. Now show me what happens if white plays qe4. For the next hour, they analyzed a single position, exploring dozens of variations and examining the subtle differences between moves that looked similar but led to completely different evaluations. It was exhausting mental work, but Zara found herself energized by the depth of understanding it provided. Your calculation has improved dramatically, Thomas observed as they finished the session. 3 months ago, you would have missed half of these variations. It feels like learning a new language, Zara replied. The more patterns I recognize, the faster I can process new positions. Exactly. Chess improvement isn't just about studying more. It's about developing more sophisticated pattern recognition. Elite players don't calculate every variation from scratch. They recognize similarities to positions they've seen before and use that knowledge to guide their decisions. In addition to working with Thomas, Zara began playing regular practice games against strong opponents that William recruited from the Manhattan Chess Club. These players rated between 2,100 and 2,300 represented the level of competition she'd face at the junior championship. Her first practice game was against Michael Rodriguez, a 22-year-old college student rated 187. Michael was studying to become a chess coach himself and approached their game with the kind of analytical mindset that Zara found both challenging and educational. I'm going to play my normal game, he told her before they started. No teaching moves, no taking it easy. If you want to improve, you need to face realistic opposition. The game that followed was the most difficult chess Zara had ever played. Michael demonstrated the difference between her current level and master strength play, finding resources in positions where she thought she had gained advantages and defending accurately in situations where weaker players would have collapsed. You're definitely talented, Michael said, after defeating her in a complex endgame, but you're still making decisions based on intuition rather than calculation. At the junior championship level, intuition isn't enough. You need to be able to prove your moves with concrete variations. How do I develop that kind of calculation ability? Practice. Lots of practice. And not just playing games. Studying tactical combinations. Solving composed problems. Analyzing master games deeply enough to understand not just what they played, but why they rejected the alternatives. Over the following weeks, Zara played practice games against a rotating cast of strong players, each of whom taught her something different about high-level chess. She began to understand that expert-level play wasn't just about being good at chess. It was about being good at many different aspects of chess simultaneously. "Your opening preparation is getting better," said Jennifer Liu, a 19-year-old rated 22-34, after their third practice game. "But you're still getting outplayed in positions where you don't know the theory. At your level, you can't afford to improvise in the opening. You need to know at least 15 to 20 moves of theory in your main lines." That seems like an enormous amount of memorization. It is. But it's not just memorization, it's understanding. When you know why certain moves are played, you can handle transpositions and novelties more effectively. This feedback led to a new phase of Zara's preparation, intensive opening study. Thomas helped her select a repertoire of openings that suited her style. Then they began the painstaking process of learning the theoretical lines deeply enough to handle master-level opposition. "We're going to focus on solid principled openings," Thomas explained as they mapped out her repertoire. The Queen's Gambit declined as black against 1.d4, the Ruy Lopez Spanish defense against 1.e4, and the English opening as white. These openings have been tested at the highest level for over a century. Why not something more modern or surprising? Because surprise value only works if you understand the positions better than your opponent. Against strong players, it's more important to reach positions where you understand the strategic principles than to hope they don't know the latest theoretical novelty. The opening preparation consumed hours each day. Zara would study master games in her chosen systems, learning not just the moves, but the plans and typical middle game structures that arose from each variation. Thomas would quiz her on key positions, forcing her to explain the strategic ideas behind different moves. "In this position from the Queen's Gambit declined," Thomas would say, setting up a familiar structure. "Black typically plays c5 at some point. Explain why." "Because it challenges white's central control and creates counterplay on the queen side," Zara would respond. "But the timing matters. If black plays it too early, white can establish a space advantage in the center." "Correct. Now, show me 3 different ways white can respond to c5 and explain the strategic differences between them." Parallel to her opening study, Zara worked on tactical improvement through daily puzzle-solving sessions. Thomas introduced her to increasingly complex combinations, forcing her to calculate deeper and more accurately than ever before. "This position is from Polgar Kasparov 2002, he said, setting up a complicated middle game position. White to move and win. But the solution requires calculating at least 8 moves deep. These tactical exercises pushed Zara to her limits, forcing her to maintain concentration and accuracy while calculating long sequences of moves. Some puzzles took her more than an hour to solve, but Thomas insisted on precision rather than speed. "Tournament games can last 5 hours, he reminded her. "You need to be able to calculate accurately even when you're tired and under time pressure." The most challenging aspect of her preparation was endgame study. Thomas introduced her to theoretical positions that required precise technique to convert advantages or achieve draws. These positions often looked simple, but contained hidden complexities that could only be mastered through deep study. "This is a basic rook and pawn versus rook endgame," Thomas said, setting up a position with just 5 pieces on the board. "It looks simple, but there are hundreds of theoretical positions you need to know to handle these endings correctly. Why is endgame theory so important? Don't most games get decided in the middle game? At your current level, yes. But as you face stronger opponents, more games will reach the endgame. And in tournament play, you can't afford to throw away winning positions because you don't know the correct technique. 3 months into her intensive preparation, Zara played a practice game against Sarah Chen, a 17-year-old rated 2298 who had represented the United States in international junior competitions. Sarah was exactly the type of opponent Zara would face at the junior championship, technically excellent, deeply prepared, and experienced at handling pressure. The game was a grueling 4-hour battle that tested every aspect of Zara's preparation. Sarah played a sharp variation in the Ruy Lopez that led to complex tactical complications by move 15. For the next 2 hours, both players navigated a maze of tactical and positional themes, with the evaluation swinging back and forth. This is the kind of game you'll face at nationals, Thomas observed during a brief break while the players analyzed an adjournment position. No one's going to make obvious mistakes. You'll have to outplay technically strong opponents in positions where the margin for error is tiny. When play resumed, Zara found herself defending a slightly worse endgame with rooks and opposite-colored bishops. The position was theoretically drawn, but Sarah pressed for nearly an hour, looking for any inaccuracy that might allow her to create real winning chances. Draw Sarah offered, finally recognizing that Zara's technique was too solid to break down. "Good game," Zara replied, meaning it. "I learned a lot from that." "You should be proud of how you handled the endgame," Sarah said, as they analyzed key moments from the game. "Your technique has improved dramatically since we first started practicing together. It doesn't feel like it when I'm playing. I still feel like I'm making it up as I go along." "That feeling never completely goes away," Sarah laughed. "Even at the master level, chess is mostly about making the best guesses you can, with incomplete information." As Zara's preparation intensified, she found herself spending less time in the Bronx and more time immersed in the rarefied world of serious chess. She still visited Mama Dorothy every weekend, but even those visits were often interrupted by study sessions or practice games. "You're getting serious about this," Mama Dorothy observed one Sunday afternoon as Zara worked through tactical puzzles at the kitchen table. "The competition is in 2 months. Thomas says I need to be solving at least 50 tactics problems every day." "That's not what I meant." Mama Dorothy sat down across from her granddaughter. "I meant you're getting serious in a way that's changing who you are." Zara looked up from her puzzle book. "Is that bad?" "Not bad necessarily, but different. There's an intensity about you now that wasn't there before, like you're carrying something heavy." "I guess I am. The junior championship represents everything I've been working toward. If I do well, it opens doors to opportunities I never thought possible. If I don't, if you don't, you'll still be the same talented, determined young woman you were before. Success doesn't define you, baby girl. It just reveals what was already there." That evening, as Zara rode the subway back to Manhattan, she thought about what her grandmother had said. The preparation for the junior championship had become all-consuming, affecting not just how she spent her time, but how she thought about herself and her goals. She was no longer the park player who had stumbled into competitive chess. She was someone who belonged in the world of elite junior competition, someone whose dreams had expanded to include possibilities she'd never imagined. But with those expanded dreams came expanded pressure, expanded expectations, and expanded chances for both triumph and failure. The girl who had played William Harrison in Bryant Park had been talented but unproven. The young woman who would soon compete for the junior championship was still developing that talent, but she was doing so with the full weight of possibility on her shoulders. 2 weeks before the championship, Thomas arranged a final practice game against the strongest opponent Zara had yet faced, Marcus Thompson, a 25-year-old international master, rated 2445. "This is your final exam," Thomas told her before the game. "Marcus represents the absolute top level of competition you might face. If you can hold your own against him, you're ready for anything the junior championship can throw at you." The game was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at the Manhattan Chess Club, with several other strong players observing. As Zara sat down across from Marcus, she felt the familiar mixture of nerves and excitement that had become her response to high-level competition. "I've heard good things about your play," Marcus said as they shook hands. "Thomas tells me you've improved dramatically over the past few months." "I've been working hard," Zara replied simply. "Let's see what you've learned." What followed was the most instructive chess lesson of Zara's life. Marcus demonstrated the subtle differences between expert-level play and true mastery, finding improvements in positions where Zara thought she was playing accurately and maintaining pressure, even when she defended correctly. But for the first time in a practice game against master-level opposition, Zara never felt completely outclassed. She held her own through a complex middle game, reached a roughly equal endgame, and even generated some winning chances in the final phase before Marcus's superior technique allowed him to secure a draw. "That was really impressive," Marcus said as they analyzed the game afterward. "6 months ago, you probably would have lost that game in 20 moves. Today you pushed me harder than some masters I've played. I still feel like I have so much to learn." "Of course you do. But you've learned enough to compete at the highest junior level. The rest will come with experience." As they finished their analysis, Thomas pulled Zara aside. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Ready," she said, and meant it. "Not ready to win necessarily, but ready to compete. Ready to show that I belong there." That's exactly the right attitude. The junior championship isn't about proving you're the best player in the country. It's about proving you're good enough to belong in that conversation. That night, Zara called Mama Dorothy to share the results of her final practice game. "So, you think you're ready for this big tournament?" her grandmother asked. "I think I'm ready to find out," Zara replied. "6 months ago, I was playing $5 games in the park. Next week, I'll be competing against the strongest junior players in the country. Either way, it's been an incredible journey." "Baby girl, let me tell you something your grandfather used to say. He said the purpose of preparation isn't to guarantee success. It's to make sure that when opportunity comes, you're ready to recognize it and capable of seizing it. Do you think I'm ready? I think you've done everything you can to prepare. Now it's time to trust that preparation and see where it takes you." As Zara hung up the phone, she felt a sense of calm that had been missing for weeks. The intensive preparation was complete. The practice games were finished. The theoretical study was done. All that remained was to step onto the stage and play the best chess of her life. Tomorrow, she would travel to Las Vegas for the U.S. Junior Chess Championship. In 5 days, she would find out whether months of preparation had transformed her from a talented park player into someone who could compete with the best young chess players in America. But tonight, for the first time in months, she felt ready for whatever came next. The Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas was unlike anywhere Zara had ever imagined herself staying. The lobby was a maze of marble floors, crystal chandeliers and gaming tables, where people casually bet more money than her family saw in a year. The famous conservatory, filled with elaborate floral displays, drew crowds of tourists who snapped photos against backdrops that changed with the seasons. "This is surreal," Zara said to William, as they checked in watching elderly slot machine players who looked like they'd been sitting in the same seats for decades. "Wait until you see the tournament room," Thomas replied, consulting his phone for messages from the tournament organizers. "They've set up the championship in one of the conference halls upstairs. 64 players all fighting for 8 spots on the national team. Their rooms were on the 15th floor, with views of the strip that sparkled in the desert heat. Zara found herself staring out the window at the controlled chaos below the constant stream of traffic, the neon signs advertising shows and restaurants, the pedestrians moving between casinos with the purposeful energy of people hoping their luck was about to change. "How are you feeling?" William asked as they unpacked. "Like I'm about to find out whether the last 6 months were realistic preparation or elaborate self-deception." The preparation was real. Thomas wouldn't have brought you here if he didn't believe you were ready. Being ready and being good enough are different things. True. But you'll never know which one applies to you unless you step onto the board and find out. The players' meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. in the main tournament hall, giving Zara her first chance to see the competition and the playing conditions. The Bellagio had transformed one of their largest conference rooms into a chess arena, with 32 regulation tables arranged in precise rows, electronic boards for live game transmission, and elevated seating for spectators and coaches. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2023 U.S. Junior Chess Championship, announced tournament director Elizabeth Morris, a woman in her 50s who had organized major chess events for 2 decades. Over the next 5 days, you'll compete in a 9-round Swiss system tournament. The top 8 finishers will earn spots on the U.S. Junior Olympic team and qualify for international competition. Zara looked around the room at her fellow competitors, taking in the diversity of ages, backgrounds, and styles. Some players looked barely old enough for high school, while others were clearly college-aged. Some wore suits and ties, others jeans and t-shirts. Some sat with obvious coaches or parents. Others appeared to be competing alone. Round 1 pairings will be posted at 8 p.m. Morris continued. Play begins tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Time control is 90 minutes for 40 moves, then 30 minutes to finish the game with a 30-second increment from move 1. As the meeting concluded, players clustered in small groups, some greeting old friends, and others introducing themselves to new opponents. Zara found herself approached by a girl about her own age, with curly red hair and an infectious smile. "I'm Emma Foster from Boston," the girl said, extending her hand. "I recognize you from the photos in Chess Life magazine. Pretty amazing story, winning your first tournament with a perfect score." "Thanks. I'm Zara. How long have you been competing?" "About 4 years. This is my second junior championship. I finished 12th last year, so I'm hoping to improve this time." Emma gestured around the room. "See the guy in the navy blazer talking to the older man with glasses? That's David Petrov. He's rated 2387 and won the Scholastic Championship last year. Definitely one of the favorites. Who else should I know about?" The girl in the corner with the demonstration board is Sarah Kim. She's from California, rated around 2350, known for incredible tactical ability. The tall boy with the red hair is Michael Chen, no relation to your coach. He's probably the strongest player here, rated 2421. As Emma pointed out, various competitors, Zara began to understand the level of talent she was facing. These weren't club players or regional champions. These were the best junior players in the country, many of whom had been competing at the national level for years. "What about you?" Emma asked. "What's your rating now?" 2089 after my last tournament, so I'm probably one of the lowest rated players here. Rating isn't everything, though. Some people play better in tournaments than their rating suggests. Plus, you have the advantage of being unknown. People can't prepare specifically for your style. That evening, Zara found her first-round pairing. She would play white against Jennifer Martinez, rated 2203 from Phoenix. A quick check of the USCF database revealed that Jennifer was an experienced tournament player who favored solid positional chess and rarely made tactical mistakes. "She's a good first-round opponent for you," Thomas observed as they reviewed Jennifer's recent games on his laptop. Strong enough to test your preparation, but not so strong that you're likely to be overwhelmed. She plays similar openings to what we've prepared for. What's her style? Patient technical, doesn't take unnecessary risks. She'll try to reach a slightly favorable endgame and grind you down with superior technique. Your best chance is to generate complications in the middle game, where your tactical ability gives you an advantage. They spent 2 hours reviewing Jennifer's games, identifying patterns in her play, and discussing strategic approaches that might give Zara winning chances. But as they finished their preparation, Thomas offered a warning. Don't get too caught up in specific preparation. At this level, games rarely follow expected patterns. The key is to play good chess, not to try to implement a predetermined plan. How do I know if I'm playing good chess? Trust your instincts. You've developed excellent positional understanding over the past 6 months. When you see a move that feels right, calculate it carefully, and then trust your evaluation. That night, Zara lay in her hotel bed, listening to the constant hum of Las Vegas traffic and air conditioning, trying to quiet her mind enough to sleep. Tomorrow would be the biggest chess game of her life, the first of 9 rounds that would determine whether she belonged among the country's elite junior players. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, from $5 games in Bryant Park to a luxury hotel in Las Vegas, from an unknown park player to a competitor at the national championship. The transformation still felt surreal, like something that had happened to someone else. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Zara felt a sense of calm confidence that had grown stronger throughout her months of preparation. She might not be the highest-rated player in the field, but she was ready to compete. She had earned her place in this tournament, and tomorrow she would start proving that she belonged here. The alarm went off at 7 a.m., giving her 2 hours to eat breakfast, review her opening preparation one final time, and mentally prepare for the most important chess game of her life. Round 1 was about to begin. The tournament hall at 9 a.m. was a study in controlled tension. 64 young chess players sat at their boards, some reviewing last-minute opening notes, others staring at the ceiling in deep meditation, a few engaged in nervous conversation with coaches or parents. Zara found board 28, where her first-round opponent was already seated and arranging her pieces with precise movements. Jennifer Martinez was exactly as advertised, composed, methodical, and carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had competed at this level before. She offered a firm handshake and a polite good luck before settling into her pre-game routine. "Players, you may start your clocks," announced Tournament Director Morris at exactly 9 o'clock. Zara pressed her clock button and watched Jennifer's time begin to tick down. The sound of 64 clocks starting simultaneously created a subtle rhythm that would define the next 5 hours of play. Zara played 1.E4, implementing the opening strategy she and Thomas had discussed. Jennifer responded with the Caro-Can defense, a solid but somewhat passive system that Zara had prepared for extensively. The opening proceeded along theoretical lines for the first 12 moves, with both players moving quickly and confidently. But on move 13, Jennifer played a slight novelty that Zara hadn't seen before. Not a mistake, but a deviation from the main line that led to a subtly different type of position. Instead of panicking or trying to remember if she'd studied this specific variation, Zara took 5 minutes to evaluate the position, using the strategic principles Thomas had taught her. The position was roughly equal, but White had slightly more space in the center, which suggested possibilities for creating middle game pressure. For the next 20 moves, they maneuvered carefully through a complex middle game where both players had realistic chances for advantage. Jennifer demonstrated why she was rated 22/03, finding accurate defensive moves and avoiding the tactical complications where Zara might have gained an edge. But as they approached the first-time control at move 40, Zara began to sense that her superior preparation was paying dividends. While Jennifer was spending increasingly longer periods in thought, Zara was finding her moves more quickly, having encountered similar positions in her training games with strong masters. On move 38, Jennifer made her first questionable decision, allowing Zara to trade into an endgame where White retained a small but persistent advantage. 2 moves later, as they reached the first-time control, Zara had a 1 position. The conversion took another hour of precise technique, but Zara had studied these types of endgames extensively with Thomas. She gradually improved her position, while limiting Jennifer's counterplay, eventually reaching a position where the win was mathematically forced. "Good game," Jennifer said, as she resigned on move 62. "You played the endgame really well. I should have tried for more complications in the middle game." "Thank you. You made me work for it. I wasn't sure I was winning until move 50-something. As Zara filled out her score sheet and reported the result, she felt a surge of confidence that went beyond winning a single game. She had faced a strong, experienced opponent and outplayed her in exactly the areas where her preparation had been focused. The months of intensive study with Thomas had translated directly into tournament success. "How did it feel?" William asked as she joined him in the spectator area. "Different than I expected. Less nerve-wracking, more like solving a puzzle. Once we got past the opening, it was just chess." "That's exactly what you want," Thomas added. "When you're properly prepared, tournament chess feels like an extension of your training, rather than something completely foreign." Round 2 was scheduled for 3 p.m., giving players a 4-hour break to eat lunch and prepare for their next opponent. Zara found herself paired against Marcus Johnson, a 16-year-old from Detroit, rated 2156, who was known for aggressive attacking play. "Marcus is dangerous when he gets attacking chances," Thomas warned as they reviewed his recent games. "But he sometimes overextends in his search for tactics. Your best strategy is to play solidly, avoid giving him the kind of sharp positions he prefers, and look for counterplay when he commits to an attack." The second game followed a completely different pattern than the first. Marcus opened with the King's Indian attack, a system designed to create attacking chances against Black's king side. For the first time in the tournament, Zara found herself defending against direct threats to her king. The position became sharp quickly, with both players castling on opposite sides and launching pawn storms against each other's kings. This was exactly the type of position that favored Marcus's style, and Zara had to calculate carefully to avoid falling into tactical traps. But Thomas's preparation paid off again. They had spent hours studying similar pawn structures, and Zara was able to find a defensive setup that neutralized Marcus's attack while creating counterplay of her own. The critical moment came on move 26, when Marcus sacrificed a knight to expose Zara's king. For 15 minutes, she calculated variations, looking for the defensive resources that would allow her to survive the attack and counterattack effectively. "I think I'm okay," she murmured to herself, finally finding the key defensive move that repelled Marcus's assault and left her with an extra piece. The rest of the game was a matter of technique. Marcus tried desperately to generate threats against Zara's king, but his attack had exhausted itself, and Zara was able to consolidate her material advantage and convert it to victory. "Wow," Marcus said as he resigned. "I thought I had you when I played that knight sacrifice. How did you find all those defensive moves?" "Practice," Zara replied simply. "My coach made me study a lot of defensive positions. It shows." "That was really well played." With 2 wins in 2 games, Zara found herself tied for the lead with 8 other players. The pairings for round 3 would be announced at 8 p.m., matching the highest scoring players against each other. "This is where the tournament really begins," Thomas explained as they walked through the hotel lobby. The first 2 rounds are often about avoiding early mistakes. From round 3 on, you'll be facing players who are also performing well. That evening, Zara discovered she would be playing black against David Petrov, the 2387 rated player that Emma Foster had identified as one of the tournament favorites. This would be by far the strongest opponent she had ever faced in a tournament game. David is a complete player, Thomas said as they prepared for the next day's play. Strong in all phases of the game, excellent preparation, very experienced at this level. You can't afford any mistakes. How do I approach playing someone rated 300 points higher than me? You respect his strength, but don't be intimidated by his rating. Chess is decided on the board, not on rating cards. Play your best chess and see what happens. Round 3 began at 9 a.m. the next morning, with Zara sitting across from a composed 17-year-old who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the strongest player in the room. "Good luck," David said as they shook hands, his tone suggesting he didn't think she would need much luck to lose. The game began with David playing a sharp variation of the English opening that led to complex tactical complications by move 10. For the first time in the tournament, Zara found herself in unfamiliar theoretical territory, forced to navigate complications without the benefit of detailed preparation. David demonstrated why he was rated so highly, finding tactical resources that kept Zara constantly on the defensive. But instead of cracking under pressure, Zara discovered that her months of tactical training with Thomas had prepared her for exactly this type of position. The game reached a critical position on move 23, with David having invested significant time in a kingside attack that had to succeed or fail within the next few moves. Zara had defended accurately so far, but David had one more tactical shot that could decide the game. As David leaned forward to calculate his final attacking try, Zara noticed something he had missed: a defensive resource that would not only repel his attack, but give her a winning counterattack on the queen side. "Your move," David said, having committed to his attack with a rook sacrifice. Zara found the defensive move she had spotted, and suddenly David's confident expression changed to one of concern. He spent 20 minutes trying to find a way to continue his attack, but Zara's defense was sound and her counterplay was becoming unstoppable. "I have to resign," David said, finally his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "I completely missed your defensive idea. That was really well played." The tournament hall buzzed with excitement as news of the upset spread. Zara Williams, the lowest-rated player in the tournament, had just defeated one of the pre-tournament favorites with precise defensive play and tactical alertness. "How does it feel to beat a 2387 rated player?" asked a chess journalist, who approached Zara as she finished filling out her score sheet. "It feels like chess," she replied. "Ratings don't move pieces. I just played the best moves I could find." But privately, Zara felt a surge of confidence that was bigger than any single victory. She had just proven to herself and everyone else that she belonged at this level of competition. The rating difference that had seemed so intimidating before the game now felt like just numbers on a page. With 3 wins in 3 games, Zara was now in clear first place, half a point ahead of the field. The transformation from unknown qualifier to tournament leader was complete, but she knew the hardest part lay ahead. "This is where it gets interesting," Thomas said as they reviewed the day's play. "You're no longer the underdog. Everyone will know who you are now, and they'll be prepared for you. Does that change how I should approach the remaining games?" "Not really. You've gotten this far by playing good chess. Keep doing that, and see how far it takes you." That night, as Zara looked out her hotel window at the Las Vegas skyline, she thought about how much had changed since her first game with William in Bryant Park. 6 months ago, she had been a talented unknown, trying to make $5 for groceries. Now she was leading the U.S. Junior Championship, 6 rounds away from qualifying for the national team. But the girl staring at the neon-lit city below was still the same person who had learned chess from her grandfather's patient instruction and her grandmother's wisdom. Success hadn't changed who she was. It had simply revealed what had always been there. Tomorrow would bring round 4 and another test of how far her talent and preparation could take her. But tonight, for the first time since arriving in Las Vegas, Zara felt like she truly belonged among the country's best young chess players. The tournament was far from over, but the most important question had already been answered. She wasn't just capable of competing at this level, she was capable of leading it. Round 4 brought with it a new type of pressure. When Zara entered the tournament hall the next morning, she could feel eyes following her movements. The chess world was small, and news of her upset victory over David Petrov had spread quickly through online forums and social media. "How are you handling the attention?" Emma Foster asked as they crossed paths near the pairings board. By trying to ignore it, Zara replied honestly, "Once I sit down at the board, none of that matters." Her round 4 opponent was Sarah Kim, the California player Emma had mentioned, as having incredible tactical ability. Rated 2351. Sarah was exactly the type of opponent who could punish any relaxation in Zara's play. "Sarah's style is very concrete," Thomas explained, as they reviewed her games. "She calculates deeply and rarely makes positional concessions. You'll need to be at your sharpest tactically." The game began with Sarah playing an aggressive variation of the Nimzo Indian defense that led to immediate complications. Unlike her previous opponents, Sarah showed no hesitation in entering sharp tactical battles, and the position quickly became the most complex Zara had faced in the tournament. For 40 moves, both players navigated a maze of tactical and positional themes, with neither able to gain a significant advantage. Sarah demonstrated why she was considered one of the strongest tactical players in junior chess, finding resource after resource to maintain the balance. But as they entered the endgame, Zara's superior preparation began to tell. The position transformed into a rook and pawn ending that was similar to positions she had studied extensively with Thomas. While Sarah was forced to calculate everything from first principles, Zara was able to rely on her theoretical knowledge to find the most accurate moves. The conversion took nearly 2 hours, with Sarah defending tenaciously and forcing Zara to demonstrate precise technique. But in the end, theory prevailed over improvisation, and Sarah resigned in a position where the win was clear, but still required several more moves to execute. "That was really impressive endgame play," Sarah said as they analyzed key moments from the game. "I felt like I held my own in the middle game, but once we reached that rook ending, you knew exactly what you were doing. Endgame study was a big part of my preparation. My coach insisted that I learn the theoretical positions. It shows. I'll have to work on my endgame theory before the next tournament." With 4 wins in 4 games, Zara was now a full point ahead of the field. The closest pursuers were David Petrov and Michael Chen, both with 3.5 points. The gap was significant, but not insurmountable. One loss could bring her back to the pack. "You're in a strong position," Thomas observed, "but 5 rounds is a lot of chess. The key is to maintain your focus and not get caught up in thinking about the final result." Round 5 paired Zara against Michael Chen, the highest-rated player in the tournament, at 24-21. If David Petrov had been a test of her ability to compete at the master level, Michael represented the absolute pinnacle of junior chess in America. "Michael's a complete player," Thomas said as they prepared. "He's particularly strong in positions where he can use his superior understanding of pawn structures to gradually outplay his opponents. Your best chance is to create complications that test his calculation rather than his positional understanding." The game began with Michael playing a quiet English opening that seemed designed to avoid the sharp tactical battles where Zara had shown her strength. For the first 20 moves, the position remained relatively simple, with both players improving their pieces and looking for small advantages. But Zara had learned something important from her previous games. Patience could be as valuable as tactics. Instead of forcing complications, she matched Michael's patient maneuvering, gradually improving her position while waiting for him to reveal his intentions. The critical moment came on move 26, when Michael offered a pawn sacrifice that would give him long-term positional compensation. It was exactly the type of subtle positional decision that separated master-level players from those just below that threshold. Zara spent 30 minutes evaluating the sacrifice, calculating not just the immediate tactics, but trying to assess the resulting pawn structure and piece activity. Finally, she accepted the pawn, deciding that her tactical alertness would allow her to defend against Michael's positional pressure. What followed was the most instructive chess lesson of Zara's tournament experience. Michael demonstrated the difference between very good chess and truly excellent chess, gradually increasing the pressure on Zara's position while giving her no clear targets to counterattack. For the next 2 hours, Zara found herself fighting for equality in a position where Michael held all the advantages. Every time she thought she had found a way to trade pieces and simplify toward a draw, Michael found a way to maintain his initiative. The decisive moment came on move 43, when time pressure forced Zara to make a critical decision without adequate calculation. She chose what looked like the safer continuation, but Michael immediately demonstrated that her choice allowed a tactical blow that won material decisively. "I have to resign," Zara said 10 moves later, recognizing that her position was hopeless. "Really well played," Michael said genuinely. "You defended much better than I expected. That position after my pawn sacrifice was objectively winning for me, but you made me prove it over the board. I felt like I was learning during the game. You never gave me a chance to breathe. That's what you have to do against strong tactical players. If I had let you create complications, you probably would have outplayed me." The loss dropped Zara back to 4-1, tied for first place with David Petrov, who had won his 5th-round game. Michael Chen and Sarah Kim were close behind at 3.5 points each. With 4 rounds remaining, the tournament was wide open. "How do you feel about the loss?" Thomas asked as they walked back to their hotel rooms. "Disappointed, but not discouraged," Zara replied honestly. "I learned more from that game than from any of my wins. Michael showed me what the next level looks like. That's exactly the right attitude. Losses are only failures if you don't learn from them." That evening, Zara received a text message from Mama Dorothy, saw the tournament results online. "Proud of you, no matter what happens. You're showing those folks what Bronx girls can do." The message reminded Zara of something she had temporarily forgotten in the intensity of competition. She wasn't just playing for herself. Her success was opening doors for other kids who looked like her, who came from neighborhoods like hers, who had been told that chess was a game for other kinds of people. Round 6 brought a new challenge. Zara was paired against Emma Foster, the friendly girl from Boston, who had introduced herself on the first day. Emma was having a solid tournament at 3.5 points, and her style posed problems that were different from the opponents Zara had faced so far. "Emma's not the strongest player technically," Thomas explained, "but she's excellent at creating the kind of messy positions where anything can happen. She thrives on chaos and time pressure." The game began quietly, but Emma gradually steered it toward the complex middle game positions, where she was most comfortable. Unlike Zara's previous opponents, Emma seemed comfortable making imperfect moves if they created practical problems for her opponent. The position reached maximum complexity around move 25, with both players having attacking chances and significant time pressure. For the first time in the tournament, Zara found herself in exactly the type of position where her park chess experience provided an advantage. While Emma was comfortable with chaos, Zara had learned to thrive in chaotic positions where calculation was impossible and intuition became paramount. The skills she had developed in Bryant Park, quickly assessing positions under pressure, finding practical solutions rather than theoretical best moves, served her perfectly. The game was decided in a mutual time scramble, where both players had less than 2 minutes to reach move 40. In the complications, Emma made a tactical error that allowed Zara to win material and reach a winning endgame. Time called the tournament director as both players reached the first time control. "Good game," Emma said as they caught their breaths. "You handle time pressure really well. Most people crack in those kinds of positions." "I've had practice playing under pressure," Zara replied, thinking of all the park games where $5 had meant the difference between eating dinner and going hungry. With the victory, Zara was back in clear first place at 5-1, with David Petrov and Michael Chen trailing at 4.5 points. 3 rounds remained, and the pressure was building toward a climactic finish. "You're in the driver's seat," William observed that evening. "But this is where the tournament really gets decided. The last 3 rounds are where champions separate themselves from everyone else." How do I handle the pressure? By remembering that you've already succeeded beyond everyone's expectations, including your own. Anything else is bonus. Round 7 paired Zara with David Petrov in a rematch of their 3rd round encounter. This time, David would have white and the benefit of knowing exactly how strong an opponent he was facing. "He'll be better prepared this time," Thomas warned. "Don't expect to surprise him again." The game began with David choosing a solid queen's gambit that steered toward the kind of positional struggle where his experience and theoretical knowledge would be most valuable. He was clearly determined not to repeat the tactical oversights that had cost him their first game. For 30 moves, they maneuvered through a complex middle game where both players had chances, but neither could gain a decisive advantage. David demonstrated why he was rated so highly, finding accurate moves in positions where lesser players would have gone wrong. But as they approached the first time control, Zara began to sense that David was playing not to lose, rather than playing to win. His moves were technically correct, but lacked the ambition necessary to create real winning chances. In the resulting endgame, Zara was able to trade into a position that was theoretically drawn, but offered practical chances due to the complex pawn structure. For the next 2 hours, she pressed for an advantage, while David defended accurately, but passively. The game was finally drawn after 78 moves, with both players having demonstrated excellent technique, but neither able to break through the other's defenses. "Well played," David said, as they shook hands. "I think we're pretty evenly matched. You defended really well. I felt like I had chances, but you didn't give me anything to work with." The draw left Zara at 5 points, still leading the tournament, but now only half a point ahead of David Petrov and Michael Chen, both of whom had won their 7th round games. With 2 rounds remaining, 3 players had realistic chances to win the tournament. The mathematics were simple. Zara needed 1 point from her final 2 games to guarantee at least a tie for first place. But in chess, as she had learned throughout the tournament, nothing was guaranteed. "This is what champions are made of," Thomas said, as they prepared for round 8. "The ability to perform when everything is on the line." "I'm ready," Zara replied, and meant it. Whatever happened in the final 2 rounds, she had already proven that she belonged among the country's best young players. Now it was time to find out if she could win it all. Round 8 arrived with the kind of electric tension that only comes when everything is on the line. The tournament hall was more crowded than it had been all week, with parents, coaches, and chess officials gathering to watch the climactic battles that would determine the national team members. Zara found herself paired with Rebecca Walsh, a 17-year-old from Oregon, rated 2287. Rebecca was having the tournament of her life, sitting at 5 points and needing to win her final 2 games to have any chance at the national team. Rebecca's got nothing to lose, Thomas observed as they reviewed her recent games. That makes her dangerous. Players who are fighting for their tournament lives often find their best chess when they need it most. The game began with Rebecca playing a sharp Sicilian defense that led to immediate complications. She was clearly going for broke, willing to risk everything on a single game, rather than settle for a safe draw that would guarantee nothing. For the first time in the tournament, Zara found herself facing an opponent who was more desperate than she was. While Zara could afford a draw and still have excellent chances in the final round, Rebecca needed a win to stay alive in the tournament. The position reached maximum complexity around move 20, with both players having attacking chances and neither able to guarantee safety for their kings. Rebecca demonstrated why she had earned her rating, finding tactical resources that kept the position balanced, despite White's initiative. But Zara's months of tactical training with Thomas proved decisive in the critical position. On move 26, she found a piece sacrifice that opened Rebecca's king position and led to a forced checkmate in 7 moves. "Beautiful combination," Rebecca said as she resigned. "I never saw that sacrifice coming. You're going to do well in the final round." "Thanks. You played really well too. That defense was incredibly resourceful." The victory guaranteed Zara at least a tie for first place, but more importantly, it secured her spot on the national team regardless of what happened in the final round. With 6.5 points from 8 games, she had achieved her primary goal for the tournament. "How does it feel to know you've made the national team?" asked the same chess journalist who had interviewed her after her win against David Petrov. "Incredible," Zara replied honestly. "6 months ago, I didn't even know there was a national team. Now I'm going to be on it." But even as she celebrated reaching her goal, Zara's competitive instincts were focused on the final round. With her victory, she was now a full point ahead of David Petrov and Michael Chen, both of whom had managed draws in round 8. A draw in the final round would guarantee her the tournament championship. "You're in complete control now," Williams said, as they reviewed the final round pairings. "One more good result, and you'll be the U.S. junior champion." Her final opponent was Christopher Davis, a 16-year-old from Texas rated 2298, who was also having an excellent tournament. Christopher was at 5.5 points and needed a win to have any chance at the national team. "Christopher's a solid positional player," Thomas explained. "Not particularly dangerous tactically, but very difficult to beat. He'll try to simplify the position and hope you make a mistake under pressure." As Zara prepared for the most important game of her life, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the first tentative moves with her grandfather's chess set to high-stakes tournament play in Las Vegas, every game had been a step toward this final test. The tournament hall was packed for the final round with spectators lined up 3 deep around the boards where the leaders were playing. Camera crews from chess websites were positioned to capture every move of the decisive games. "This is it," Thomas said, as Zara approached board 1 for the final time. "Play your chess, trust your preparation, and see what happens." Christopher was already seated when Zara arrived at the board, looking calm and composed, despite the pressure of the moment. They shook hands warmly, both recognizing the significance of the game they were about to play. "Good luck," Christopher said genuinely. "May the best player win." "You too. Let's have a great game." The game began with Zara playing a quiet English opening, choosing to avoid the sharp theoretical battles that had characterized some of her earlier games. With a draw being sufficient for the championship, she saw no reason to take unnecessary risks. Christopher responded with a solid setup that led to the kind of maneuvering game where both players would have chances, but neither would face immediate threats. For the first 20 moves, the position remained roughly balanced, with both players improving their pieces and looking for small advantages. But as they entered the middle game, Zara began to feel the pressure of playing for a specific result, rather than simply playing the best chess she could. Every move required her to balance the need for progress against the risk of overextending her position. Christopher sensed her slight tension and began to press more aggressively, creating the kind of complications that could either give him winning chances or backfire spectacularly. For the first time in the tournament, Zara found herself wishing the game would just end in a draw. The critical position arose on move 28, when Christopher offered a pawn sacrifice that would lead to sharp complications. Zara spent 25 minutes evaluating the sacrifice, trying to determine whether accepting it would give her winning chances or expose her to unnecessary risk. Finally, she decided to decline the sacrifice and steer toward a simplified endgame where her superior technique would give her excellent drawing chances, even if she couldn't win. The resulting position was exactly what she had hoped for: a rook and pawn endgame, where both players had chances, but neither had a significant advantage. Christopher continued to press for a win, but Zara's endgame preparation allowed her to find all the key defensive moves. After 5 hours of play with both players, having used almost all their allotted time, the position reached a theoretical draw that neither could avoid. Christopher offered a draw on move 63, and Zara accepted immediately. "Congratulations," Christopher said warmly. "That was really well played. You deserve to win this tournament." "Thanks. You played a great game too. You made me work for every point." As the handshake concluded, the tournament hall erupted in applause. Zara Williams, the unknown Park player who had entered the tournament as the lowest-rated competitor, had just won the U.S. Junior Chess Championship with a score of 7 points from 9 games. The next few hours were a blur of photographs, interviews, and congratulations. Zara found herself holding a trophy that was almost as large as she was posing for pictures with William and Thomas and fielding questions from chess journalists who wanted to understand how such an unlikely champion had emerged. "What does this victory mean to you?" asked the reporter from Chess Life magazine. "It means that talent really doesn't have zip codes," Zara replied. "It means that kids from neighborhoods like mine can compete with anyone if they get the right opportunities and support." "What's next for you?" "Learning. This tournament showed me how much I still have to discover about chess. But it also showed me that I belong at this level." Later that evening, as the celebration died down and the other competitors returned to their rooms, Zara found herself alone with William and Thomas in the hotel bar, trying to process what had just happened. "I keep expecting someone to tell me there's been a mistake," she said, staring at the championship trophy on the table between them. "No mistake," Thomas replied. "You earned every point of that victory. The way you handled the pressure in the final rounds was masterful." "What impressed me most," William added, "was how you stayed true to yourself throughout the tournament. You didn't try to become someone else under pressure. You just became a better version of who you already were." As they talked about the tournament and what came next, Zara's phone buzzed with a text message from Mama Dorothy. "Saw the results online. Your grandfather would be so proud. When you coming home to show me that trophy?" The message reminded Zara that her greatest victory wasn't the tournament championship. It was proving that a girl from the Bronx could dream bigger than anyone thought possible and make those dreams come true through determination and hard work. But even as she celebrated, Zara was already thinking about the future. The junior championship was just the beginning. There would be international competitions, college decisions, and choices about how to use her growing platform to create opportunities for other kids like her. The girl who had played $5 games in Bryant Park was gone, replaced by someone who understood that success brought both opportunities and responsibilities. Tomorrow she would begin the next phase of her journey, carrying with her everything she had learned about chess, about competition, and about herself. But tonight, she was simply Zara Williams, U.S. Junior chess champion, sitting in a Las Vegas hotel with the 2 men who had helped make her dreams possible, planning how to use her success to change the game for everyone who came after her. The flight back to New York was unlike any journey Zara had ever taken. She carried her championship trophy in a special case, but more importantly, she carried the knowledge that everything had changed. The phone calls had started before they even left Las Vegas. Invitations to tournaments, requests for interviews, offers from sponsors who suddenly saw value in associating with the unlikely champion. "How do you want to handle all this attention?" William asked as they flew over the Colorado Rockies. Carefully, Zara replied, scrolling through dozens of emails that had arrived overnight. "I want to make sure that whatever I do next helps other kids get opportunities, not just builds my own profile." Thomas, who had been quietly reviewing chess positions on his tablet, looked up. "You'll have offers to train with grandmasters, invitations to elite camps, coaches who specialize in preparing players for international competition. The chess world is going to want to fast-track your development. And you need to remember that sustainable improvement takes time. Don't let anyone convince you to skip steps in your development just because you've had early success." As the plane descended toward LaGuardia Airport, Zara found herself thinking about the community she was returning to. The Bronx hadn't changed while she was winning chess championships in Las Vegas, but her relationship to that community had been transformed by her success. She was no longer just Zara Williams, Dorothy's granddaughter, and Marcus's chess student. She was Zara Williams' national champion, someone whose story would be told in chess magazines and whose games would be analyzed by players around the world. But more than that, she was now someone with a platform and a responsibility to use it wisely. The first stop was Mama Dorothy's apartment, where a small crowd of neighbors had gathered to welcome home their local champion. Mrs. Gonzalez had made a banner that read, "Welcome home champion." Zara and Miguel was practically bouncing with excitement as he waited to hear about the tournament. "Tell me everything," Mama Dorothy said as they settled in the familiar kitchen, where so many important conversations had taken place. "Don't leave out any details." For the next 2 hours, Zara described every round of the tournament, from her nervous first game against Jennifer Martinez to the pressure-packed final round against Christopher Davis. Mama Dorothy listened intently, asking questions about specific positions and strategies that showed she understood chess better than she usually let on. "Your grandfather would have loved that combination you played against Rebecca Walsh," she said when Zara finished describing round 8. "He always said that the most beautiful chess came when everything was on the line." I kept thinking about his lessons during the tournament, especially in the time scrambles, when I had to trust my instincts instead of trying to calculate everything. "That's good. Success shouldn't make you forget where your strength comes from." That evening, William and Thomas joined them for dinner, and they began discussing the practical implications of Zara's championship. The national team commitment would require international travel for several months of the year. There would be training camps, practice sessions with other team members, and preparation for world-level competition. "We need to think about this systematically," William said. "Zara's education, her ongoing chess development, and her role in the programs we want to create for other kids from underserved communities." "What kind of programs?" Mama Dorothy asked. "Chess education initiatives in schools that don't currently have programs," Zara explained. "Scholarships for kids who show promise, but can't afford coaching or tournament fees. Maybe eventually a chess center right here in the Bronx, where local kids can train seriously." "That sounds ambitious." "It is," William agreed. "But Zara's success has opened doors that weren't available before. People are willing to fund programs when they have visible success stories to point to." Over the following weeks, Zara began to understand what it meant to be a public figure in the chess world. Her victory had made national news, with feature stories appearing in major newspapers and chess websites around the world. The narrative of the Park player turned national champion resonated with audiences far beyond the chess community. But with the attention came pressure to capitalize on her success in ways that didn't always align with her values. Several agents approached her with endorsement deals that would have been financially lucrative, but required her to promote products she didn't believe in. The chess world is small, Thomas warned her, but the sports marketing world is huge and sometimes predatory. You need to be careful about which opportunities you accept. How do I tell the difference between good opportunities and exploitation? Ask yourself whether each opportunity helps you become a better chess player or helps create opportunities for other kids. If it does neither, it's probably not worth your time. The most significant opportunity came from an unexpected source. The University of Chicago's chess program offered her a full scholarship to study mathematics while training with their elite chess team. The offer would allow her to continue her education while developing her chess at the highest level. "This is perfect," Thomas said when they reviewed the offer. Chicago has one of the strongest university chess programs in the country, and their academic reputation would give you options beyond chess. Plus, William added, Chicago isn't that far from New York. You could maintain your connections to this community while building your chess career. But Zara surprised them both by asking for time to consider the offer. That weekend, she returned to Bryant Park to the same stone table where she had first played William 9 months earlier. The park looked exactly the same, but Zara felt like she was visiting a museum of her former life. The tables were full of players she recognized, some of whom looked up in surprise as she approached. "Zara, we saw you on the news," called out Marcus Thompson, an older player who had given her some of her toughest games in the early days. "National champion. Huh? Too good for us. Park players now." "Never," Zara replied, settling into the chair across from him. "Want to play a game?" For the next hour, she played casual games with the regulars, who had been part of her chess education. The level was far below what she had experienced in Las Vegas, but the atmosphere was something she had missed during months of intensive tournament preparation. "You play differently now," observed Elena Vasquez, a woman in her 50s who had been one of Zara's first regular opponents. "More patient, more controlled. But you haven't lost that killer instinct." "Good coaching," Zara replied simply. "And what happens now? You going to disappear into the elite chess world and forget about us?" The question struck at the heart of what Zara had been wrestling with since returning from Las Vegas. Success had given her opportunities that most players could only dream of, but it had also created distance between her and the community that had shaped her. "I'm thinking about starting a chess program here in the Bronx," she said finally. "Something for kids who might have talent, but don't have access to proper coaching or tournaments." "You mean like you were a year ago?" "Exactly like I was a year ago." That conversation crystallized Zara's thinking about the University of Chicago offer. While the chess program was excellent and the academic opportunities were impressive, accepting it would mean leaving behind the community that had made her success possible. "I want to defer the Chicago offer for a year," she told William and Thomas that evening. "I want to spend the next year working on chess programs here in New York while I prepare for international competition." "Are you sure?" Thomas asked. "Elite chess development is time-sensitive. A year delay could affect your long-term progress." "Maybe. But I'm 18 years old. I have time to develop my chess. The kids in this neighborhood might not have time to wait for someone else to create opportunities for them." William nodded approvingly. "What kind of program are you envisioning?" "Something comprehensive. After-school chess instruction in local schools, weekend tournaments for different skill levels, coaching for the most promising players. Maybe eventually, a physical chess center where serious students can train." "That's a significant undertaking," Thomas warned. "Running educational programs is completely different from playing chess." "Are you prepared for that responsibility?" "I'm prepared to learn. Just like I learned to play tournament chess." Over the next month, Zara threw herself into developing what would become the Dorothy Williams Chess Foundation, named in honor of her grandmother. William provided initial funding and business expertise, while Thomas helped design curriculum and training programs. But the vision and energy came from Zara herself. The first pilot program launched at PS 147, the elementary school in Zara's neighborhood. 25 students signed up for after-school chess instruction, ranging in age from 8 to 12, and representing the same diversity of backgrounds that characterize the broader community. Most of these kids have never seen a chessboard before, observed Maria Santos, the school's community liaison, who had volunteered to help with the program. But they're excited because they know it's something their neighborhood champion does. Zara found teaching to be as challenging as tournament competition, but in completely different ways. Instead of calculating variations and managing time pressure, she had to find ways to explain complex concepts to children who were encountering them for the first time. "Why does the horse move weird?" asked 8-year-old Destiny Rodriguez during the first week of classes. The knight Zara corrected gently moves in an L shape because it's the only piece that can jump over other pieces. That makes it special and powerful in certain positions. Like a superhero. Exactly like a superhero. Within weeks, several of the students began showing genuine aptitude for the game. Miguel Gonzalez, the boy who had been playing with bottle caps and cardboard, proved to have exceptional pattern recognition abilities. Destiny Rodriguez demonstrated the kind of tactical vision that couldn't be taught, only developed. "These kids are learning faster than I expected," Thomas observed after visiting one of the classes. "Some of them have real potential." "They're motivated," Zara replied. "They see chess as a way to accomplish something meaningful, not just as a game." The program's success led to expansion. Within 3 months, the foundation was operating in 5 schools throughout the Bronx, serving over 100 students. Weekend tournaments drew families who had never imagined their children competing in organized chess events. But the most meaningful moment came when Zara received a phone call from the U.S. Chess Federation. They wanted to feature the Dorothy Williams Chess Foundation in their national magazine, highlighting it as a model for developing chess talent in underserved communities. "This is exactly what we hoped would happen," Williams said as they reviewed the magazine article. "Your success has created a platform that's opening doors for other kids." "It's just the beginning," Zara replied. "I want every kid in the Bronx who has chess talent to have the same opportunities I got." Meanwhile, her own chess development continued at the highest level. She worked with Thomas on preparation for international competitions, studying the games of world-class players, and developing the opening repertoire she would need to compete against grandmasters. Her first international tournament was the World Youth Championship in Romania, where she would represent the United States against the strongest junior players from around the globe. The level of competition would be even higher than what she had faced in Las Vegas, with several opponents already holding grandmaster titles. "This will be different from anything you've experienced," Thomas warned as they prepared. "The time zones, the cultural differences, the pressure of representing your country, it all adds up." "I'm ready," Zara said, and meant it. "Besides, I'll have more than just my own success to play for. Every game I play well shows other kids that they can dream bigger than anyone expects." The night before leaving for Romania, Zara had dinner with Mama Dorothy in the same kitchen where so many important conversations had taken place. "You've come a long way from that little girl who used to set up chess pieces on this table," her grandmother observed. "Sometimes it feels like I'm still that little girl, just with more responsibility." "That's good. Success should expand who you are, not replace who you were." Mama Dorothy reached across the table and took her granddaughter's hand. "Your grandfather would be so proud of everything you've accomplished, but I think he'd be most proud of how you're using your success to lift up other people." "I hope so. I want everything I do to honor what he taught me about chess and what you taught me about character. Then, you're already succeeding at the most important things." The flight to Romania marked another transition in Zara's remarkable journey. She was no longer the unknown park player who had surprised everyone at the junior championship. She was now an established member of the national team, someone whose games would be analyzed and whose results would matter to American chess. But as the plane lifted off from Kennedy Airport, carrying her toward her first World Championship competition, Zara thought about the chess classes she would return to, the foundation programs that were changing lives in her community, and the responsibility she carried to prove that talent truly knew no boundaries. The girl from Bryant Park had become a woman with a mission that extended far beyond her own chess success, and this was only the beginning. Bucharest in October was a city of golden leaves and ancient architecture, where medieval churches stood alongside Soviet-era apartment blocks and modern shopping centers. The World Youth Championship was being held at the National Library, an imposing building that seemed designed to intimidate visitors with its marble columns and soaring ceilings. Zara arrived as part of a 6-person American delegation, joining 5 other junior players who had earned their spots through various qualifying tournaments. She was the only team member who hadn't been competing internationally for years, and she could feel the subtle distance that created with her teammates. "First time in Europe?" asked Kevin Chang, a 17-year-old from California who was competing in the under-18 section. His tone wasn't unfriendly, but it carried the casual superiority of someone who had been traveling to international tournaments since middle school. "First time outside the United States," Zara admitted. "You'll get used to it. The time zones are the worst part. That and the food, they don't really understand what Americans want to eat." Sarah Brennan, the team's top-rated player, looked up from her opening preparation. "The competition here is going to be much stronger than what you faced at nationals. Half these players are already masters, and some of the top seeds are grandmasters." "I understand," Zara replied calmly. "I'm here to learn as much as to compete." "Good attitude," said Coach Peterson, the team's official leader. "Zara, you're probably the least experienced player here, but you're also the most recent success story. That gives you both disadvantages and advantages." The tournament format was a 9-round Swiss system with players from 43 countries competing in different age divisions. Zara was in the under-18 girls section, where she would face the strongest female junior players in the world. Her first opponent was Anastasia Volkov from Russia, rated 2387 and considered one of the pre-tournament favorites. Anastasia was 16 years old, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who had been competing at the highest levels for years. "Welcome to international chess," Anastasia said as they shook hands before the game, her English accented but precise. "I have studied your games from the American Championship. Very impressive for someone so new to serious competition." "Thank you. I've studied some of your games too. Your tactical style is very creative." The game that followed was unlike anything Zara had experienced in American competition. Anastasia demonstrated the difference between national-level and world-level chess-finding resources in positions where American players would have struggled, and maintaining pressure with a sophistication that came from years of high-level training. For 40 moves, they battled through a complex Sicilian defense, where both players had chances, but neither could gain a decisive advantage. Anastasia's technique was flawless, her calculation precise, her strategic understanding deep. But Zara held her own, finding defensive resources and creating counter chances that forced her opponent to remain alert throughout the game. The position was roughly equal when Anastasia offered a draw on move 43. "Good game," she said, as they analyzed key moments together. "You defend much better than I expected. In Russia, we heard about the American girl who came from nowhere to win your championship, but we thought maybe it was luck. This was not luck. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. You have good instincts, good fighting spirit. But your opening preparation, this needs work for international level. Today, I could not punish your inaccuracies, but stronger players will." The feedback was delivered kindly but directly, and Zara recognized its value immediately, American junior chess, even at the national championship level, was several steps below the international standard. She would need to raise her game significantly to compete with the world's best. Her second-round opponent was Li Wei from China, a quiet 15-year-old who had won the Asian Youth Championship the previous year. Li Wei's style was completely different from Anastasia's patient positional, focused on gradually accumulating small advantages rather than seeking immediate tactical complications. The game lasted nearly 6 hours, with both players maneuvering through a complex endgame that tested Zara's theoretical knowledge and practical technique. Li Wei demonstrated the kind of precise endgame play that came from intensive study with world-class coaches, but Zara's natural tactical ability allowed her to find defensive resources that kept the position balanced. When Li Wei finally offered a draw after 87 moves, both players were exhausted, but satisfied with the quality of their play. "Very good endgame technique," Li Wei said in careful English. "In China, we study American chess, but we did not know about you. Now we will study your games too." 2 draws in her first 2 games left Zara at an even score, but more importantly, they gave her confidence that she could compete at the international level. She wasn't winning yet, but she wasn't being overwhelmed either. "How do you feel about the level of competition?" Coach Peterson asked that evening as the team gathered for dinner. "It's definitely stronger than anything I've faced before," Zara replied honestly, "but not impossibly stronger. The games are longer, the positions are more complex, but it's still chess." That's exactly the right attitude. Some players come to their first world championship and get intimidated by the reputation of their opponents. You're treating them like chess players, not legends. The third round brought Zara's first victory against Maria Gonzalez from Spain in a sharp tactical game that showcased exactly the kind of pattern recognition that had made her successful in American competition. Maria was a strong player, but she made the mistake of trying to outcalculate Zara in complex tactical positions. "Where did you learn to calculate so quickly?" Maria asked, after resigning in a position where Zara's attack had become unstoppable. "Playing chess in parks, where you don't have much time to think," Zara replied. "You learn to trust your instincts. It shows." That combination on move 26 was beautiful. The victory improved Zara's confidence and her standing in the tournament. After 3 rounds, she was tied for 10th place in a field of 48 players, a result that exceeded everyone's expectations for her first world championship. But round 4 brought her back to earth with a sobering loss to Petra Novak from Slovakia, a player whose strategic understanding was simply superior to Zara's in every phase of the game. Petra demonstrated the difference between talented improvisation and deep positional knowledge, gradually outplaying Zara in a game where no obvious mistakes were made. "You played well," Petra said after the game, "but you are still learning how to handle positions with long-term strategic imbalances. This comes with experience and study." Any advice? Study the games of Karpov and Petrosian. They were masters of positional play. And work with a coach who can teach you pawn structure theory. This is fundamental for international level. The loss dropped Zara back to an even score, but it also provided valuable insight into the areas where her chess needed development. Thomas had prepared her well for tactical complications and endgame technique, but her understanding of strategic principles was still developing. Round 5 paired her with Emma Larson from Denmark, a player whose aggressive style was similar to some of the American juniors Zara had faced in Las Vegas. The familiarity of facing an attacking player allowed Zara to demonstrate her defensive skills, and she managed to neutralize Emma's initiative and convert a slight endgame advantage into a full point. "Americans are supposed to be aggressive players," Emma said with a laugh after the game. "But you defend like a Russian." "I learned from whoever would teach me," Zara replied. Style doesn't matter as much as finding good moves. With 3 points from 5 games, Zara was performing exactly at her rating level, a solid result for a first-time World Championship participant. But more importantly, she was learning lessons that couldn't be taught in any American training environment. The 6th round brought another educational experience, this time against Yuki Tanaka from Japan. Yuki was rated slightly lower than Zara, but demonstrated a level of opening preparation that was far superior to anything Zara had encountered in American competition. Japanese players study opening theory very deeply, explained Kevin Chang that evening. Their federations invest heavily in theoretical preparation. That's why they're always dangerous in the opening phase. The game with Yuki illustrated this perfectly. For the first 20 moves, Yuki demonstrated encyclopedic knowledge of a complex variation in the Nimzo Indian defense, reaching a middle game position that heavily favored black despite the rough material equality. But as they moved away from theoretical positions and into original play, Zara's practical skills began to assert themselves. She found creative solutions to the problems posed by Yuki's superior opening preparation, gradually equalizing the position through accurate tactical play. The game ended in a draw after 64 moves. But Zara felt like she had learned more about international chess in one game than in weeks of preparation. "Your improvisation is very good," Yuki said as they analyzed the game. "But you cannot always rely on this. Against stronger players, opening mistakes are punished immediately." "I'm working on my opening preparation," Zara replied. "This tournament is showing me how much I need to improve." The 7th round brought Zara's most significant victory of the tournament against Alexandra Dimitrov from Bulgaria. Alexandra was rated 2401 and had been considered one of the pre-tournament favorites, but she made the mistake of underestimating Zara's tactical ability in a sharp position. The game was decided by a brilliant queen sacrifice on move 31 that led to forced checkmate. The combination was so spectacular that it drew applause from spectators and other players who had gathered to watch the conclusion. "That was incredible," Alexandra said, shaking her head in amazement. "I saw the queen sacrifice, but I thought it was impossible." "How did you calculate so deeply?" "Pattern recognition," Zara replied. "I've seen similar motifs in tactical puzzles. When I saw the position, the solution felt familiar." The victory created a buzz throughout the tournament hall. Word spread quickly that the American newcomer had just defeated one of the tournament favorites with a spectacular combination, and suddenly, Zara found herself surrounded by players and coaches who wanted to understand how she had found such a complex tactical shot. "This is how reputations are built," Coach Peterson observed. "One brilliant game can change how everyone sees you as a player." With 4 points from 7 games, Zara was now tied for 6th place and within striking distance of a medal position. The final 2 rounds would determine whether her first World Championship would be remembered as a solid learning experience or as a breakthrough performance. Round 8 paired her with Ingrid Andersson from Sweden, the tournament's 2nd seed, and a player with several international titles to her credit. This was exactly the type of opponent that Zara had hoped to face, someone whose reputation was built on years of international success rather than a single spectacular result. The game was a masterpiece of strategic complexity, with both players demonstrating the highest level of chess understanding. Ingrid showed why she was seated so highly, finding subtle improvements in positions where less experienced players would have been satisfied with equality. But Zara matched her move for move, showing that months of intensive preparation had raised her game to a level where she could compete with anyone. The position remained balanced throughout a 5-hour struggle that tested every aspect of both players' skills. When Ingrid offered a draw on move 71, both players had demonstrated chess at its highest level. "You are much stronger than your rating suggests," Ingrid said, as they analyzed key moments from the game. "In Sweden, we will remember this game. You have the fighting spirit of a champion. Thank you. Playing against you taught me things about chess that I never understood before. That is what international competition does. Every game teaches you something new. With 4.5 points from 8 games, Zara needed a victory in the final round to have any chance at a medal. Her opponent would be determined by the final round pairings, which would match players with similar scores against each other. That evening, as the American team gathered for their final preparation session, Coach Peterson addressed Zara directly. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, you've exceeded everyone's expectations for your first World Championship. Half a point from the final 2 rounds would be an excellent result. But I want to try for more, Zara replied. I've learned so much from this tournament. I want to see if I can apply those lessons in the final round. That's exactly the attitude that brought you this far. Just remember, whether you win, lose, or draw tomorrow, you've already proven that American chess has a new star. As Zara prepared for her final round game, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. 18 months ago, she had been playing $5 games in Bryant Park, worrying about grocery money and her grandmother's medical bills. Now she was competing against the world's best junior players in Romania, representing her country and inspiring kids back home who looked like her. The game tomorrow would determine her final tournament standing, but the real victory had already been achieved. She had proven that talent could emerge from anywhere, that proper support could transform potential into achievement, and that success carried with it the responsibility to create opportunities for others. Win or lose, Zara Williams had already changed the game. The 9th and final round of the World Youth Championship arrived with crystalline clarity that seemed to sharpen every sensation. Zara woke before dawn, her mind already focused on the game ahead. Through her hotel window, she could see Bucharest beginning to stir in the early morning light traffic building on the streets below, and early commuters heading to work. Today's opponent would be Anna Kozlova from Ukraine, rated 2389, and sitting at exactly the same score as Zara, 4.5 points from 8 games. The mathematics were simple. Whoever won this game would likely finish in the top 5 of the tournament, while the loser would settle for a mid-table result. Anna's a complete player, Coach Peterson had explained the night before. Strong in all phases, excellent preparation, lots of international experience. She's exactly the type of opponent you want to face in a final round, someone who will test everything you've learned. Zara spent the morning reviewing her preparation one final time, but not obsessively. Thomas had taught her that over-preparation could be as dangerous as under-preparation, and she trusted the work they had done over the past months. At 2:30 p.m., she entered the tournament hall for the final time. The atmosphere was different today, more intense, more focused. Parents and coaches filled every available spectator seat, and cameras were positioned around the boards where the leaders were playing. Anna was already seated at board 6, arranging her pieces with the precise movements of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. She was 17, with the kind of composed demeanor that came from years of high-level competition. "Good luck," Anna said as they shook hands, her English carrying a slight Eastern European accent. "I hope we play a good game. Thank you. May the best player win." The tournament director called for play to begin, and Anna pressed Zara's clock to start her time. The sound of 48 clocks ticking created the familiar rhythm that had defined the past week. But today, it seemed more urgent, more meaningful. Zara played 1.e4, choosing the aggressive opening that had served her well throughout the tournament. Anna responded with the Sicilian defense, immediately signaling her intention to fight for the initiative, rather than settle for a safe draw. The opening proceeded along theoretical lines that both players knew well, but Anna introduced a sharp variation on move 8 that led to immediate complications. This was exactly the type of position that could decide the game quickly. Either white would gain a lasting advantage from superior development, or black would consolidate and use the extra space to launch a counterattack. For the next 20 moves, they navigated through tactical complications that required precise calculation from both players. Anna demonstrated why she was rated so highly, finding accurate defensive moves that neutralized Zara's initiative while preparing her own counterplay. But as they entered the middle game, Zara began to feel the benefits of her intensive preparation with Thomas. The position was similar to structures they had studied extensively, and she was able to find improvements that gradually increased her pressure on Anna's position. The critical moment came on move 26, when Anna faced a choice between simplifying to a slightly worse endgame or accepting a pawn sacrifice that would lead to sharp tactical complications. After 15 minutes of thought, she chose the tactics, deciding that her chances were better in complex positions than in technical endgames. What followed was exactly the type of calculation-heavy position where Zara's Park chess experience provided a crucial advantage. While Anna was searching for the objectively best moves, Zara was finding practical solutions that created maximum problems for her opponent. On move 32, Zara played a quiet bishop move that looked routine, but contained a hidden tactical point. Anna spent 20 minutes trying to find the flaw in her opponent's idea before realizing that she had walked into a tactical trap that would cost her material. "Very nice," Anna murmured as she played the only move that avoided immediate material loss. "I did not see that idea coming." But the tactical sequence had left Anna with a clearly inferior position, and Zara pressed her advantage with the kind of technical precision that Thomas had drilled into her during months of endgame study. The conversion took another hour, with Anna defending tenaciously and forcing Zara to demonstrate accurate technique in a complex rook endgame. But Zara's preparation held up under pressure, and she gradually improved her position until the win became mathematically forced. "I resign," Anna said finally, offering her hand with genuine grace. "Congratulations. That was very well played from start to finish." "Thank you. You made me work for every advantage." As they filled out their score sheets and reported the result, Zara realized that she had just achieved something remarkable. With 5.5 points from 9 games, she had finished tied for 4th place in her first World Championship, a result that exceeded even her own optimistic expectations. The closing ceremony that evening was a blur of awards presentations and official photographs. Zara found herself on stage with the other high finishers, holding a bronze medal that represented not just her individual achievement, but the success of everyone who had supported her journey. "How does it feel to medal in your first World Championship?" asked a chess journalist during the post-tournament interviews. "Incredible," Zara replied honestly, "but also humbling. This tournament showed me how much I still have to learn about chess at the international level." "What did you learn?" "That talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. I was fortunate to get the support I needed to develop my ability. Now, I want to help create those same opportunities for other kids." "Will this change your approach to chess?" "It will expand it. I'll continue improving as a player, but I also want to keep building programs that help other young people discover their potential." Later that evening, as the American team gathered for a farewell dinner, Coach Peterson raised a toast to Zara's performance. "In 40 years of coaching, I've never seen anyone adapt to international competition as quickly as Zara did this week. She didn't just compete at this level, she thrived at it. What impressed me most," added Sarah Brennan, "was how she stayed true to her own style while adapting to the higher level of competition. That's not easy to do." As the celebration continued around her, Zara found herself thinking about home, about Mama Dorothy, about the kids in the Chess Foundation programs, about the community that had shaped her into someone capable of competing on the world stage. Her phone buzzed with a text message from William. "Saw the final results online. Dorothy is telling everyone in the building about her granddaughter, the world medalist. When are you coming home to show us that medal? The message reminded Zara that her greatest victory wasn't the bronze medal, or the rating points, or the international recognition. It was proving that a girl from the Bronx could dream bigger than anyone thought possible, and then work to make those dreams reality. But even as she celebrated, Zara was already planning what came next. The World Championship had given her credibility in the international chess community, which would help her attract support for the Foundation's programs. It had also shown her the level she needed to reach to compete for world titles in the senior divisions. The flight home to New York carried not just a medal and memories, but a renewed sense of purpose. Zara Williams had conquered her first world championship. But more importantly, she had proven that success was possible for kids who came from places where dreams seemed impossible. Now it was time to go home and help other dreamers discover what they were capable of achieving. 5 years after winning Olympic gold, Zara Williams stood in the main hall of the Dorothy Williams Chess Center, watching a scene that perfectly captured everything she had worked to achieve. The center was busier than ever, with students ranging from 6-year-old beginners learning how pieces moved to teenage masters preparing for national championships. At one table, Miguel Gonzalez, now 17 and rated 2156, was analyzing a position with Destiny Rodriguez, who at 16 had become the youngest player ever to earn the Woman International Master title through foundation programs. Both were preparing for college on full chess scholarships, following paths that hadn't existed when Zara was their age. "Remember when you used to play with bottle caps?" Zara asked Miguel during a break in his training. "I remember thinking that was all I'd ever have access to," he replied with a grin. "Now I'm going to Stanford on a chess scholarship. Crazy how things change when someone believes in you." The foundation had indeed changed dramatically since its modest beginnings. There were now Dorothy Williams chess centers in 12 cities, serving over 8,000 students annually. The program had produced 3 national champions, sent 47 students to college on chess scholarships, and been replicated internationally by chess federations in 6 countries. But perhaps more importantly, it had changed the culture of American chess. The sport was no longer seen as the exclusive domain of affluent suburban families. Inner-city schools routinely competed with elite private academies, and college chess programs actively recruited from underserved communities. "The landscape is completely different now," observed Dr. Susan Polgar during a visit to the Bronx Center. "When you started playing seriously, there might have been a dozen strong players from backgrounds like yours in the entire country. Now there are hundreds." "That was always the goal," Zara replied, watching a group of 8-year-olds solve tactical puzzles with the kind of focused intensity she remembered from her own early training. Individual success doesn't mean much if it doesn't create opportunities for others. Zara's own chess career had continued to flourish alongside her foundation work. She had earned the International Master title during her junior year at Webster University, completed her business degree with honors, and was now within striking distance of becoming America's first African-American female grandmaster. Her rating had climbed to 2483, putting her among the top 10 women in the United States and making her a regular selection for international competitions. She had competed in 3 more Olympiads, helping America win 2 additional medals, and had represented the U.S. in the Women's World Championship. But chess achievements, while personally satisfying, were no longer her primary focus. At 23, Zara had evolved into a full-time social entrepreneur whose work extended far beyond chess education. The foundation's success had led to speaking engagements at major corporations, consulting contracts with educational organizations, and board positions with several nonprofits focused on youth development. Her TED Talk on Talent Without Boundaries had been viewed over 2 million times. "You've become more than a chess player. William observed during one of their regular strategy sessions. You're a voice for systemic change in how we identify and develop potential. Chess was the vehicle, not the destination, Zara replied. The real goal was always to prove that exceptional ability exists everywhere. We just have to create systems to recognize and nurture it. That philosophy had guided the Foundation's expansion into new areas. In addition to chess programs, they now offered coding classes, robotics teams, debate clubs, and college preparation workshops. The common thread was intensive mentoring and high expectations for students who were often written off by traditional educational systems. The results spoke for themselves. Foundation alumni had earned admission to Ivy League universities, secured internships at major tech companies, and started their own social enterprises. They were becoming doctors, engineers, teachers, and entrepreneurs, living proof that zip codes didn't determine destiny. One of the Foundation's most successful graduates was now working alongside Zara as her deputy director. Destiny Rodriguez had deferred her own college acceptance to spend a gap year, helping expand Foundation programs to Los Angeles and Atlanta. I want to do what you did, Destiny had explained when she accepted the position. Use chess success as a platform to create opportunities for other kids who look like us. Then let's make sure you have an even bigger platform to work from. Zara had replied, beginning the process of training her potential successor. The conversation reflected Zara's long-term thinking about sustainability and leadership development. She was already planning for a future where the Foundation's mission would be carried forward by the students it had helped develop, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of opportunity and achievement. That planning became urgent when Zara received an unexpected phone call from the U.S. Chess Federation. They were forming a task force on diversity and inclusion in American chess, and they wanted her to serve as its chair. This is a chance to influence policy at the national level, explained USCF President Carol Meyer during their meeting. Everything you've proven with the Foundation could be scaled up to affect the entire chess ecosystem. What kind of changes are you talking about? Funding for scholastic programs in underserved communities, revised rating systems that account for different development trajectories, training programs for coaches who work with diverse populations. Essentially, institutionalizing the innovations your Foundation has pioneered. The position would require Zara to spend significant time traveling and working with chess organizations across the country. It would mean stepping back from day-to-day Foundation operations, but it would also give her the platform to create systemic change that could benefit thousands of students she would never meet personally. After extensive discussions with her board of directors and Foundation staff, Zara accepted the position. The announcement generated significant media attention, with chess publications describing it as recognition that she had become the most influential figure in American chess education. How does it feel to go from park player to chess policy leader in less than a decade? Asked a reporter from Sports Illustrated during the press conference, announcing her appointment. It feels like the natural evolution of everything I've been working toward, Zara replied. Chess gave me opportunities that changed my life. Now I want to make sure those same opportunities are available to every kid who has the talent and desire to pursue them. The interview took place in Bryant Park, at the same stone table where she had first played William Harrison 8 years earlier. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone familiar with her story. But the most meaningful moment of the day came when the cameras stopped rolling and Zara found herself alone at the table where everything had started. She set up the pieces on the board, remembering the nervous 14-year-old who had been trying to make enough money for groceries and her grandmother's medication. That girl could never have imagined the journey that awaited her: tournament victories, Olympic gold, international recognition, and the platform to change thousands of lives. But she had possessed the essential qualities that made everything else possible: the courage to compete, the wisdom to accept help, and the determination to use her success to benefit others. "Excuse me, miss," said a voice behind her. "You're Zara Williams, right?" She turned to see a girl who looked about 12 years old, carrying a chess set and wearing the kind of serious expression that Zara recognized from her own youth. "I am. What's your name, Aisha? I just started learning chess at my school. They have one of your foundation programs. My teacher said you used to play here in the park before you became famous." "I did. I learned a lot about chess and about life at this table. Could you maybe play a game with me? I promise I won't waste your time. I've been studying really hard." Zara smiled, remembering all the adults who had taken time to play with her when she was just beginning her chess journey. "I'd be honored to play with you." "Set up the board." As they began their game with tourists and regular park players gathering to watch, Zara reflected on the perfect circularity of the moment. 8 years ago, she had been the unknown challenger, hoping someone would give her a chance to prove herself. Now, she was the established champion, able to provide that same opportunity to the next generation. The game was more competitive than Zara had expected. Aisha played with the kind of tactical sharpness and fighting spirit that reminded Zara of her own early development. When the girl found a clever combination to win material in the middle game, Zara found herself genuinely impressed. "That was a beautiful tactical shot," she said, as Aisha converted her advantage into victory. "How long have you been playing?" "6 months. But I practice every day after school, and I watch chess videos online whenever I can. Keep that up, and you'll be playing in tournaments soon." "Have you thought about that?" "I'd love to, but my mom says tournaments are expensive, and we can't afford the entry fees." Zara reached into her bag and pulled out a business card for the Foundation's scholarship program. "Give this to your teacher. We have funds specifically to help talented players like you get tournament experience." "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Someone did it for me when I was your age. That's how this works. We help each other get better." As they analyzed the game together with Aisha, asking thoughtful questions about strategic concepts and tactical patterns, Zara felt the familiar excitement that came from recognizing exceptional potential in its early stages. This girl could be the next success story, the next scholarship recipient, the next foundation graduate who used chess as a platform for larger achievements. Or she could be something even more remarkable, the next person to identify and develop talent in others, continuing the cycle of opportunity and achievement for another generation. "I should get home," Aisha said finally, carefully packing her chess set. "Thank you for playing with me, and thank you for starting those programs at my school. My teacher says chess is going to change my life." "It will if you let it," Zara replied. "But remember, the real victory isn't just becoming a strong player yourself. It's using whatever strength you develop to help other people discover their own potential." As Aisha walked away clutching the Foundation scholarship information like a precious document, Zara reset the pieces on the board one more time. The late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the park, and the familiar sounds of New York City life provided a soundtrack that felt like home. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mama Dorothy, now 78, but still following every detail of her granddaughter's career. "Saw the news about your new position. Your grandfather would be so proud. When are you coming home for dinner? I'm making your favorite." The message reminded Zara that no matter how far her journey took her or how much influence she gained, she would always be Dorothy Williams's granddaughter, shaped by the values and wisdom of the woman who had raised her to believe that success meant lifting others up alongside yourself. As she packed up the chess set and prepared to leave Bryant Park, Zara thought about all the games yet to be played, all the students yet to be taught, all the barriers yet to be broken down. The work was far from finished, but the foundation was solid. Every child who learned chess through foundation programs, every player who earned scholarships through foundation support, every community that gained access to quality chess education. They were all pieces in a larger game that Zara was still playing, still winning, still using to change the world, one move at a time. The Queen's Gambit had been accepted long ago. Now it was time to see just how far the resulting positions could be developed, how many lives could be transformed, how much potential could be unleashed when talent was given the support it deserved. The game continued, and Zara Williams was ready for whatever moves came next. The auditorium at Lincoln Center was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on screens in adjoining halls. The occasion was the Dorothy Williams Chess Foundation's 20th anniversary gala, celebrating 2 decades of programs that had fundamentally transformed American chess and created a model for youth development that had been replicated worldwide. On stage, a 53-year-old Zara Williams, now Dr. Williams, having earned a doctorate in education policy, stood before an audience that included world chess champions, Nobel laureates, tech billionaires, and hundreds of foundation alumni who had become leaders in their own fields. 20 years ago, she began, I was a kid from the Bronx who played chess for grocery money and dreamed of something bigger than survival. Tonight, I'm looking out at an audience that includes 47 foundation alumni who have earned doctoral degrees, 32, who have started their own companies, 18, who are teaching in the schools where they once studied, and 3 who have become grandmasters. The applause was sustained and heartfelt, coming from people whose lives had been directly touched by the Foundation's work, and others who simply appreciated the broader impact of its mission. Among the notable attendees was Miguel Gonzalez, now a successful software engineer who served on the Foundation's board of directors. Destiny Rodriguez had become Dr. Rodriguez, founding her own educational nonprofit after completing a PhD at Harvard. Both credited their success to opportunities that began with chess lessons in a converted warehouse in the South Bronx. But the real measure of our success, Zara continued, isn't in the individual achievements of our alumni, impressive as they are. It's in the systematic change we've created in how American society identifies, nurtures, and develops talent regardless of economic circumstances. The statistics were indeed impressive. Foundation programs now operated in 48 states, serving over 100,000 students annually. The organization had awarded more than $50 million in scholarships, funded 200 full-time teaching positions, and established chess as a recognized pathway to college admission for students from underserved communities. But perhaps more significantly, the Foundation's model had been adopted internationally. There were now Dorothy Williams-inspired programs operating in Brazil, South Africa, India, and 12 other countries, proving that the principles of talent identification and development transcended cultural and economic boundaries. The girl who started this journey believed that chess could change lives, Zara said, gesturing to a large screen that displayed photos from the Foundation's early days. What she discovered was that changing lives through chess could change the world. In the audience, 88-year-old Dorothy Williams sat in the front row, still sharp and proudly wearing a pin that read Grandma of Champions. Beside her was William Harrison, now 73, and serving as the Foundation's chairman emeritus, having dedicated the final decades of his business career to educational philanthropy. Thomas Chen, 62, and graying but still coaching at the highest levels, watched from the section reserved for Foundation staff and longtime supporters. His coaching tree now included dozens of masters and several grandmasters, many of whom had emerged from Foundation programs. Tonight we celebrate not just what we've accomplished, but what's still possible, Zara continued. Because for every success story in this room, there are thousands of children whose potential remains undiscovered, whose talents are constrained by circumstances they didn't choose and shouldn't have to accept. The foundation's current statistics reflected the scale of remaining work. Despite 20 years of growth, they were still reaching only a fraction of the students who could benefit from their programs. For every Miguel or Destiny, there were dozens of equally talented children who never got the chance to discover what they were capable of achieving. But the impact extended far beyond chess. Foundation alumni had become teachers, doctors, engineers, artists, and entrepreneurs. They were serving in Congress, leading Fortune 500 companies, conducting research at major universities, and starting their own social enterprises. The chess skills were secondary to the broader lessons about persistent strategic thinking and believing in possibilities that seemed impossible. The most important thing we learned, Zara said, is that talent is distributed equally across all communities, but opportunity is not. Our job has been to correct that imbalance, one student at a time, one program at a time, one life at a time. The evening's program included video messages from Foundation alumni around the world, each describing how chess had opened doors to opportunities they never could have imagined. A surgeon in Chicago credited Foundation training with teaching her the pattern recognition skills that made her exceptional in the operating room. A tech entrepreneur in Silicon Valley described how chess strategy had informed his approach to business development. But the most moving moment came when 12-year-old Aisha Patterson, the girl Zara had played in Bryant Park 5 years earlier, took the stage to perform a piece she had composed about the Foundation's impact on her life. "Before I learned chess," Aisha said, her voice clear and confident, "I thought smart was something you either had or didn't have. The Foundation taught me that smart is something you develop by working hard and never giving up on yourself." Aisha had indeed developed dramatically since that first game in the park. She was now a nationally ranked player who had earned a full scholarship to a prestigious private school. But more importantly, she had become a peer mentor in Foundation programs, teaching younger students and embodying the cycle of opportunity that Zara had envisioned. "My goal is to become a grandmaster, like Dr. Williams," Aisha continued, "but also to start my own programs for kids who don't think they're smart enough for chess. Because everyone is smart enough if they get the right support." The applause that followed was thunderous recognition, not just for Aisha's accomplishments, but for what she represented, the continuing evolution of the Foundation's mission through new generations of leaders. As the formal program concluded, Zara found herself surrounded by alumni supporters and colleagues who wanted to share their own stories of transformation and impact. The conversations continued late into the evening, with small groups clustering around the reception hall to discuss current programs, future plans, and the ongoing work of expanding opportunity. 20 years, mused William as he and Zara stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. "When we started this, I thought we might help a few dozen kids. I never imagined it would become a movement." "It became a movement because the need was bigger than we realized," Zara replied. "Every success story inspired 10 more people to get involved, to donate, to start their own programs. The Foundation just provided proof that change was possible." "What's next?" "Another 20 years of expansion." "Actually, I'm hoping the Foundation won't be necessary in 20 years, Zara said with a smile. "I'm hoping we'll have succeeded in changing the system enough that every talented child gets opportunities automatically, not through special programs." It was an ambitious vision, but one that seemed achievable given the Foundation's track record. Major school districts were now incorporating chess education into their standard curricula. Colleges were actively recruiting from Foundation programs. Corporate sponsors were funding expansion faster than the organization could hire qualified staff. Most importantly, Foundation alumni were becoming leaders in their own communities, creating the kind of systemic change that could outlast any individual organization. Dr. Williams said, a voice behind them. They turned to see a young man in his 20s, wearing a military uniform with lieutenant's bars. "I'm Marcus Johnson," he said, extending his hand. I was in your first class of students in the Bronx, back when the foundation was just getting started. I wanted to thank you for everything the program gave me. Marcus, I remember you, Zara said warmly. You were the quiet kid who solved tactical puzzles faster than anyone else. What are you doing now? I'm an army engineer stationed in Afghanistan. But chess is still part of my life. I teach local kids when I'm off duty using materials the foundation sends overseas. It's amazing how universal the game is. The conversation continued for several minutes, with Marcus describing how chess had taught him strategic thinking that served him well in military planning, and how foundation lessons about persistence had helped him through West Point and officer training. Stories like his are why we do this work, William observed as Marcus rejoined the reception. Chess was just the beginning for him. It opened doors to opportunities that changed his entire life trajectory. As the evening wound down, Zara found herself thinking about legacy and sustainability. She was now in her 40s, still actively involved in foundation operations, but increasingly focused on developing the next generation of leaders who would carry the mission forward. Several foundation alumni had already started their own educational organizations, using lessons learned through chess to address other areas where talented students needed support. The model was replicating itself organically, which suggested it would continue growing even without her direct involvement. Grandma Dorothy. How are you holding up? Zara asked as she found her grandmother near the coat check, surrounded by well-wishers who wanted to meet the woman who had raised the foundation's founder. I'm tired but happy, Dorothy replied, her voice still strong despite her age. Your grandfather would have loved seeing all this. He always said chess was about more than the game itself. I think about him every day, especially when I'm working with young players. His lessons about patience and strategy guide everything I do. Good. But remember what I always told you, success isn't just about how high you climb. It's about how many people you bring with you. As they gathered their coats and prepared to leave, Zara reflected on how perfectly her grandmother's words captured the foundation's core philosophy. Individual achievement was meaningful only when it created opportunities for others to achieve as well. The ride home took them through the Bronx, past the neighborhood where Zara had grown up and where the foundation's first programs had been launched. The area had changed dramatically over 20 years. New businesses, improved schools, lower crime rates, and while chess programs deserved only partial credit for the transformation, they had played a role in changing how the community thought about its children's potential. One more stop, Zara said to their driver as they passed a familiar street corner. 5 minutes later, they were standing in front of the Dorothy Williams Chess Center, which now occupied an entire city block and served as the foundation's global headquarters. The building was dark except for security lights, but Zara could see evidence of the day's activities through the windows: chess sets still arranged on tables, demonstration boards covered with position diagrams, bulletin boards displaying tournament results, and scholarship announcements. This is where it all comes together, she said to William and Dorothy as they stood on the sidewalk looking up at the building. Every program we run, every student we serve, every life we change, it all flows through this place. It's beautiful, Dorothy said simply. Marcus would be so proud. As they drove the final few blocks to Dorothy's apartment, Zara's phone buzzed with messages from around the world. Foundation partners in Brazil, reporting on a new program launch, alumni in California, sharing news of their latest achievements, board members in various time zones, discussing expansion opportunities. The work never stopped, because the need never stopped. But 20 years of evidence had proven that the work was effective, sustainable, and scalable. What had started as one woman's attempt to create opportunities for kids like herself had become a global movement that was changing how society identified and developed talent. Thank you, Dorothy said as they helped her to her apartment. For everything you've built, for everyone you've helped, for making our family's story mean something bigger than just ourselves. Thank you for raising me to believe that dreams don't have zip codes, Zara replied, embracing her grandmother. Everything else grew from that foundation. Later that night, alone in her own apartment, Zara sat at the chessboard, where she still solved tactical puzzles each morning, a routine she had maintained for over 20 years. The board was the same wooden set her grandfather had given her, now carefully maintained, but still bearing the small imperfections that made it unique. She set up a position from one of her early tournament games, remembering the nervous teenager who had been so amazed to defeat experienced opponents. That girl had possessed talent, but she had also possessed something more important, the courage to accept help when it was offered, and the wisdom to use success as a platform for serving others. The foundation would continue growing, serving more students, creating more opportunities, proving again and again that potential existed everywhere and needed only support to flourish. New leaders would emerge from foundation programs, carrying the mission forward and adapting it to meet evolving needs. But the core principle would remain unchanged. Every child deserved the chance to discover how far their talents could take them, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. As Zara turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, she felt the deep satisfaction that came from work that mattered, from a life that had been lived in service of something larger than personal achievement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new students who needed support and guidance. The game would continue, move by move, life by life, dream by dream. And somewhere in the city, in a small apartment, or a crowded classroom, or maybe even a park, another talented child was discovering chess for the first time, beginning a journey that could lead anywhere. Imagination and determination could take them. The Queen's Gambit had become a queen's legacy, and the game was far from over.